Closed time-like curves, CTCs. Imagine walking down a street you've never seen before. The buildings curve in impossible ways. The lights shimmer like they remember something. And then, just ahead, you see yourself. Not a mirror, not a hallucination. A version of you from minutes ago, or maybe hours. You wave, they wave back. You reach out, and the loop closes. This isn't science fiction. It's a theoretical possibility hidden within Einstein's field equations. Welcome to the world of closed time-like curves, CTCs, where time doesn't just flow forward, but doubles back on itself. A place where cause and effect become tangled in loops, and reality begins to feel like a Mobius strip. To understand how this is even possible, we have to go back to the structure of space-time itself. According to general relativity, gravity is not a force acting through space, but the curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects distort space-time, creating the effect we experience as gravity. But these equations don't just describe planets and stars pulling on each other, they allow for something stranger. They permit geometries where time can twist back on itself, forming loops. These are the closed time-like curves. The term might sound technical, but its implications are breathtaking. A time-like curve is simply a path through space-time that a massive object, like you, can follow without exceeding the speed of light. Now, if that path closes on itself, if it loops back, it means you could start in the present, walk forward through time, and eventually find yourself arriving back at the very moment you started. Not metaphorically. Literally. You could meet your past self. One of the earliest examples of such a geometry was proposed by Gödel in 1949. Yes, the same Gödel who rocked the foundations of mathematics with his incompleteness theorems. He constructed a rotating universe, a solution to Einstein's equations, where the rotation of the entire cosmos creates paths that loop back in time. In this universe, CTCs aren't a side effect. They're built into the fabric of reality. But Gödel's universe is a strange place. It requires the whole universe to rotate, and there's no evidence our real universe behaves this way. Still, the idea opened a door. What other shapes could space-time take? What other paths could curl time into a loop? Enter the Tipler Cylinder. Imagine an infinitely long cylinder spinning near the speed of light. General relativity suggests that such a structure could twist space-time around it, dragging time itself into a spiral. Fly a spaceship around the cylinder in just the right way, and you might arrive back before you left. Again, this isn't magic, this is math. And the math checks out. Then there's the concept of wormholes, tunnels through space-time, predicted by the Einstein-Rosen bridge. If you could stabilize a wormhole with exotic matter, something with negative energy density, you might be able to use it to create a time loop. Move one mouth of the wormhole near a black hole, allow time dilation to do its job, then bring it back. The two mouths would now be offset in time. Step through one, and you emerge in the past. But here's where things get deeply unsettling. If you can travel to your past, you can interfere with it, save someone who died, stop an accident, even prevent your own journey. That's the paradox. What happens if you stop yourself from going back in time? Who then stopped you? The classic example is the grandfather paradox. What happens if you go back and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? Do you cease to exist? But if you never existed, who prevented the meeting? This is where closed time-like curves force us to abandon classical logic. In a universe with CTCs, time is no longer a line. It's a knot. Some physicists argue that paradoxes resolve themselves through consistency constraints. That is, events along a CTC are self-consistent. You can go back and meet your past self, but you can't change the past. Whatever you do was already done. Free will, at least in the traditional sense, might not survive in such a universe. Imagine this. You go back in time to prevent a fire. You burst into the building, warn everyone, but in doing so, knock over a candle. That candle starts the fire. You didn't prevent it, you caused it. But it had to happen that way, because that's how it always happened. That's how you knew to go back. Causality becomes circular. This idea is known as the Novikov self-consistency principle, and it suggests the universe won't allow paradoxes. Even in a time loop, only consistent events can occur. But this raises a chilling question. Are we trapped in inevitability? Are we prisoners of a timeline that loops forever? Quantum mechanics offers another twist. In 1991, physicist David Deutsch proposed a way to incorporate CTCs into quantum theory. In his model, particles traveling through a CTC could interact with past versions of themselves without causing contradictions, thanks to the probabilistic nature of quantum states. The past isn't fixed, but it's constrained. This opens the door to multiple outcomes, where every choice leads to a new timeline, multiverse territory. So, where does this leave us? Mathematically, CTCs are allowed. Physically, we don't know. No one has ever observed a CTC. We don't have the technology or the exotic matter to build wormholes or Tipler cylinders, but the equations remain. Silent, unyielding, waiting. And maybe that's the most haunting part. These curves through time sit quietly in the math, whispering possibilities we can't yet reach. Not because they're fiction, but because we don't yet know how to touch them. Maybe we never will. Or maybe, in some distant lab, an experiment will flicker into life, and someone, some version of someone, will step out of a chamber and say, "I've been here before." CTCs ask us to reconsider the very flow of time. What if time isn't a river, but a loop? What if every moment echoes endlessly, trapped in a recursive spiral of cause and effect? What if the past is just one more destination? And what if the person you'll become has already come back? Causal loops. Have you ever heard a story so strange, so impossibly twisted in logic, that your brain almost refuses to believe it's even possible? Imagine a scenario where an object, an idea, or even a person exists purely because of time travel. No origin, no creator, no beginning. It simply exists because it must. This is the heart of one of the most mind-bending concepts in physics and philosophy, the causal loop. Causal loops, also known as Bootstrap paradoxes, are situations in which an event is among the causes of another event, which in turn is among the causes of the first. It sounds paradoxical because it defies our fundamental understanding of cause and effect. In everyday life, causes come before their effects. But in a causal loop, that simple order collapses. Cause and effect chase each other in a circle, locked in an eternal dance. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you are an engineer in the year 2080. One day, a mysterious package arrives at your lab. Inside, you find a fully functional blueprint for a time machine. Inspired, you study it, replicate it, and eventually build it. Years later, you decide to send that very blueprint back in time to yourself. Now, ask yourself, who actually invented the time machine? You received the design from yourself, but a future version of you. And that future version only had it because you got it in the first place. The blueprint was never actually created. It has no origin. It just exists forever because it must. It's easy to dismiss this as just a science fiction trope used in movies like Predestination, 12 Monkeys, or The Terminator. But causal loops are not just cinematic playthings. They are mathematically plausible within the framework of general relativity. That's right. According to the laws of our universe as we currently understand them, these loops could be real. They could, in theory, happen. In general relativity, there's a solution to Einstein's field equations called a closed Timelike curve. These curves are paths through space-time that loop back on themselves. If such curves exist, and if you were to follow one, you could find yourself returning to the exact moment you started, creating a loop in time. These are the mathematical skeletons of causal loops. Let's push deeper. Imagine a world-renowned violinist. He becomes famous, inspiring millions. One day, a young girl travels back in time with a video of his performances. She shows it to a young, struggling boy, the same violinist, years before he ever played. The boy is mesmerized, driven. He studies the instrument day and night, trying to live up to the image he saw, and he does. He grows up to become the same musician who inspired himself. In this case, his skill, his fame, and his legacy all originated from a future that he created, but was also created by him. A perfect loop. Causal loops raise an impossible question. Where does the information come from? If the time machine blueprint came from the future, but only exists because it was sent to the past, then it has no true point of creation. It's called a bootstrap paradox because it's like pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. Completely impossible under normal rules, but somehow complete and consistent within the loop. This challenges the very idea of reality being linear and logical, because now, Things can exist without being caused in the traditional sense. These loops are stable. They don't contradict themselves. They're not paradoxes in the sense of a logical error, but in the sense that they violate our expectations of time. What's even more disturbing is the implication for free will. If you are part of a causal loop, are you truly making choices, or are you locked into a self-fulfilling script that must always play out the same way to preserve the loop's consistency? The violinist must become great, the blueprint must be sent back, the girl must inspire the boy, or the loop breaks, and the reality that contained it may unravel. Some scientists argue that causal loops, though theoretically possible, are so improbable that the universe might prevent them. This leads to hypotheses like the Novikov self-consistency principle, which suggests that time travel might be allowed, but only in ways that prevent paradoxes. In other words, the universe protects itself. You can't go back and kill your grandfather before your parent is born, because something, anything, will always happen to stop it. Fate or probability steps in to ensure the timeline doesn't fall apart. But others argue differently. Quantum mechanics, with its strange superpositions and many worlds interpretation, opens the door to alternative timelines. Perhaps causal loops don't destroy logic, but rather fracture reality. Every loop spawns a new universe. Every cause and effect relationship multiplies into a web of possible outcomes, some looping, some not. And what about identity? Imagine a baby is left on a doorstep with a note. That child grows up, travels back in time, and becomes the person who leaves the baby on the doorstep. That child is their own parent. There's no missing link, no biological origin outside the loop. That person was always meant to be. They are both cause and effect, origin and destination. As fascinating as causal loops are, they leave us with no easy answers, only bigger questions. Do they actually occur in our universe, or are they simply mathematical curiosities? Could they be responsible for some of the mysteries in our own history, anomalous knowledge, lost inventions, even myths of eternal recurrence? We may never know. But one thing is clear. Causal loops remind us that time is not what we think it is. It's not a simple river flowing from past to future. It may be a tangled web, looping back on itself, rewriting its own origins, and spinning stories that never begin and never end. And if you ever find yourself holding a device you haven't yet built or reading a note you haven't yet written, take a moment. You might be the protagonist in a causal loop. The question is, what will you do with it? Gödel's rotating universe. In the year 1949, the world was still trying to catch its breath after the devastation of the Second World War. The horrors of war had shaken civilization. But amid the ruins, minds were turning once again to the deepest puzzles of existence. One of these minds belonged to a man whose name had already etched itself into the foundations of mathematics: Kurt Gödel. Known for his incompleteness theorems, Gödel had proven that within any consistent mathematical system, there exist true statements that cannot be proven. It was a revelation that tore through the heart of logic itself. But now, Gödel turned his brilliant and unsettling mind toward the very fabric of the universe. What Gödel proposed was nothing short of heresy to the tidy linearity of time that we cling to. Using Einstein's own equations of general relativity, Gödel discovered a solution, a possible model of the universe, where time did not march forward like a soldier on parade. Instead, it looped, it curled back on itself. It spun in a great cosmic vortex. In Gödel's rotating universe, time travel wasn't science fiction. It was an unavoidable feature. If this universe existed, you could, in principle, travel into your own past. Imagine that for a moment. A cosmos so deeply twisted by rotation that the path of time resembles not a line, but a spiral, an Ouroboros devouring its own tail. In Gödel's universe, time is not the indifferent river we imagine, flowing from past to future without regard for our desires. It is a storm, whirling, circular, and recursive. You could climb into a spaceship, plot a course through the right gravitational curves, and, without breaking any laws of physics, end up in a moment that already passed. You could meet yourself, or worse, change yourself. Gödel's rotating universe was a mathematically consistent solution to Einstein's field equations. That means it wasn't mere fantasy. It wasn't a dream. It fit. The equations held. The logic clicked. And that terrified people. Because if the math is sound, then reality may be stranger than we can endure. So what was this model? Gödel imagined a universe filled with a special kind of matter that rotated globally. This rotation, subtle and imperceptible on local scales, twisted the geometry of space-time itself. Light cones, the regions of space and time that define what events can influence each other, began to tip. At a certain distance, they tipped so far that the future of an object could intersect its own past. The implications are mind-shattering. Time travel becomes not only possible, but baked into the very structure of the cosmos. To visualize this, think of space-time as a fabric. In the traditional model, it's stretched flat or curved by gravity. But in Gödel's model, it's twisted, like a spiral staircase coiled around a central axis. Climb far enough up or down, and you return to where you began, only at a different moment in time. It's like walking a path through the woods that leads you back to the very same footprints you left hours or years earlier. But surely, you might ask, this is only a mathematical curiosity? An elegant hallucination? That's the comforting answer. Because Gödel's universe contradicts everything we intuitively believe about causality. Cause and effect lose their footing. The future could influence the past. The notion of free will becomes fragile. How do you choose if your choices are already written in a closed loop? Einstein himself was deeply disturbed by Gödel's solution. Though he admired Gödel's genius and enjoyed long walks with him in Princeton, he rejected the idea that such a universe could reflect reality. It was too strange, too dangerous. And yet, he could not disprove it. The equations allowed it. That's the horror of Gödel's model. It is logically watertight and existentially catastrophic. It shatters the illusion of temporal safety. If Gödel is right, then the walls that separate today from yesterday are thin and full of holes. Time is not a fortress. It is a maze. Now let's consider an example. Imagine a scientist in a Gödel universe. She designs a machine, perfectly tuned to the curvature of space-time, and steps into it. The machine doesn't violate relativity. It doesn't go faster than light. It simply follows a path dictated by the geometry of this rotating cosmos. As she moves, the light cones tilt further, guiding her into a past moment. She arrives in her own laboratory, hours before she left. She leaves a note to her past self, changes a variable, and walks away, never needing to repeat the journey. Cause and effect fold in on themselves. The paradoxes pile up like snow. And yet, in the math, nothing is broken. Gödel's rotating universe does not require wormholes or exotic matter. It's not a Hollywood contraption. It's an emergent property of space-time under rotation. That's what makes it so haunting. It doesn't feel artificial. It feels inevitable. But here's the catch. Gödel's universe does not match what we observe. Our universe does not appear to rotate on a cosmic scale. There's no evidence of the kind of global angular momentum that Gödel's model demands. So, physicists set it aside, categorizing it as a curiosity, a beautiful but unreal scenario. And yet, what if they're wrong? What if the rotation is subtle, so vast and diffuse that it slips past our instruments? What if we live in a local pocket of a larger rotating reality? One where time loops are not science fiction, but destiny? The emotional weight of this idea is staggering. We yearn for time to be linear because linearity gives us closure. We want to believe that we can grow, move forward, leave our past behind. But Gödel whispers that perhaps the past is never truly gone. Perhaps it waits for us. Perhaps we are always circling it, even now, without knowing. And so, Gödel, the same man who proved that mathematics cannot prove everything, now showed us a universe where time cannot be trusted, a world where every moment might echo forever, wrapped in loops we cannot escape. The logic is clear. The physics is sound. But the implications? They are deeply, chillingly human. Because if time is a circle, what does it mean to be free? Information loops. Imagine holding in your hands a book that you never wrote, but you will, a book that someone handed to you, a complete manuscript, flawless and finished. You flip through the pages, confused. It's your handwriting, your style, even your signature, but you have no memory of ever writing it. You study it, learn from it, and eventually, years later, you decide to replicate it word for word. You don't write it because it came from you. You write it because you received it. But where, then, did the original information come from? This is not a science fiction plot. It's the haunting concept known as an information loop, a temporal anomaly where data, ideas, or even inventions pass through time in a closed circuit, with no identifiable origin. The information exists, but no one ever created it. It's simply passed along, endlessly cycling through the loop of time, a paradox so elegant and so unnerving, it threatens our very understanding of causality, originality, and the nature of time itself. Let's explore a thought experiment. You're a scientist, and one day you receive a blueprint for a revolutionary machine. The design is flawless, decades ahead of your time. You build it, and it works. Eventually, you're hailed as a genius. But later in life, you send the blueprint back in time, perhaps through a time traveler or a secure transmission, ensuring your younger self receives it. You never designed it. You only copied it. But now, where did the idea originate? This is an information loop. The blueprint was never originally conceived. It exists in a strange limbo, uncreated, unowned, a ghost of causality trapped in a time cycle. One of the most compelling fictional representations of this phenomenon is found in the film Predestination, where a time agent is caught in a tangled loop of identity and causality so tight it implodes the concept of linear time. But real physics doesn't entirely rule it out. General relativity, through solutions like closed Timelike curves, permits time loops under certain extreme conditions, like rotating black holes or wormholes stabilized with exotic matter. But let's dig deeper. Information loops challenge something fundamental: the conservation of information. In physics, especially in quantum theory, information is not supposed to be lost or magically created. It must be traceable. It must have a source. But in these loops, that rule breaks. The information was never created. It was always there. And this leads us to something terrifying. Imagine a universe where some of our greatest ideas didn't originate with us. Imagine if some pieces of music, theories of physics, or engineering marvels exist only because they were handed down through a temporal loop. We celebrate their genius. But there is no genius, only the illusion of it. Now, you might ask, could this really happen? Let's consider a hypothetical scenario grounded in the possible. Suppose in the distant future, someone invents time travel, not full physical transport, but the ability to send data backwards. Maybe just one message, maybe just one file. A scientist, desperate to save the world, sends their life's work to a protege in the past. The young scientist receives it. The world changes. And decades later, this same scientist perfects the same data, unaware it originated with them. The implications are staggering. Did the idea ever exist outside the loop? Who gets credit for its invention? More importantly, if we remove the loop, if we break the circuit, does the idea vanish forever? Information loops are a form of the Bootstrap paradox, and they are terrifying because they exist right at the edge of logic. They don't break the rules, but they bend them until they scream. They show us that time may not be a straight line, but a river with whirlpools, backflows, and strange eddies where ideas can swim against the current, only to emerge upstream, older than they should be. Consider this real-world analogy. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, written in the 19th century. What if someone in the 23rd century sent a digital recording of it back to the 18th century? And a young Ludwig heard it. Inspired, he begins composing what he believes is his own masterpiece, not knowing it's an echo of the future. The origin is lost. The music exists outside of creation. That's an information loop. And it's not about fiction. It's about the terrifying possibility that reality allows this. In science, ideas like the Novikov self-consistency principle suggest that any actions taken by a time traveler, including transferring information, must be consistent with history. Meaning, if you give Beethoven his own music, history was always that way. You didn't change the timeline, you fulfilled it. But this doesn't resolve the loop, it enshrines it. And here's the most haunting question. What if we're already inside such loops? Think about the sudden bursts of inspiration that seem to come from nowhere. Think about discoveries that appear, seemingly fully formed, ahead of their time. Think of minds like Tesla, Newton, or even Da Vinci, men whose ideas felt unmoored from the centuries they lived in. Could they have tapped into something already looped, something waiting in the folds of time? We may never know, because the nature of the loop conceals its own origin. If something is passed back through time and recreated exactly, It erases its own trail. It is information with no past and no beginning, only the endless present of a closed causal chain. We want to believe that ideas come from us, that we are creators, innovators, dreamers. But what if sometimes we are merely transcribers, writing down the words handed to us through the cracks in time? And what if one day you received a letter written in your own hand from the future? Would you read it? Or would you burn it, afraid of where the loop might begin? Wormhole loop theory. Imagine waking up from a dream, except it wasn't a dream. It was a memory, a vivid one, a perfect snapshot of something that hasn't happened yet. You dismiss it, shrug it off as déjà vu. But hours later, every moment plays out exactly as you recalled. The same words, the same expressions, the same glance from a stranger you've never met. And in that instant, it doesn't feel strange. It feels inevitable. Now imagine that what you experienced wasn't a psychological trick or brain glitch, but a consequence of a physical event, something woven into the very fabric of space-time. This is the wormhole loop theory. A wormhole is not science fiction anymore. Theoretical physics allows their existence within Einstein's equations of general relativity. Essentially, they're tunnels, bridges between two distant points in space-time. Imagine folding a piece of paper so that 2 points touch, and then pushing a pencil through them. That's your wormhole, a shortcut through the cosmos. But what if the two ends of this wormhole weren't just separated in space, but in time? That's where things get strange and terrifying. Suppose someone builds a traversable wormhole. They anchor one end near Earth and take the other on a journey through space at relativistic speed, near the speed of light. According to Einstein's time dilation, time would pass more slowly for the moving end. When it returns, one end of the wormhole connects to the present and the other connects to the past. Now, pause. Breathe that in. You've just created a tunnel through time, a path where particles, information, even people could step into one end and emerge before they left. This isn't a paradox. It's permitted by physics, in theory. And from that, the loop begins. In the wormhole loop theory, the ends of a wormhole act not just as a bridge, but as a recorder of causality. If you enter the future end and emerge in the past, then you are now part of a causality loop. Your actions can initiate events that lead to the very creation of the wormhole you stepped through. Reality circles in on itself. It repeats. It echoes. Think of a chessboard. You make a move, and instead of a new game, you find yourself replaying the same game over and over. Only this time, you're aware. You remember. Every time you make the same move, and your opponent counters, and you lose. What if déjà vu isn't just a feeling, but a fragment of memory echoing through these temporal loops? If the same person walks through the same wormhole repeatedly, emerging into the same past, it could create a reality that is stuck in an eternal feedback loop. Their memories accumulate across iterations. A person might begin to recall things they never consciously lived, until they do. But here's where it gets darker. Suppose someone dies in one timeline, only to loop back into the past and prevent that death. The act of preventing it might create a new cascade of events, leading back to the original death, a fixed loop. Time, in this framework, doesn't want to change. It wants to maintain consistency. Any attempt to change it brings you back to where you started. It's not just a loop, it's a trap. In such a reality, fate isn't poetic, it's physics. Now, let's pull from something real. Kip Thorne, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist and the man behind the science of Interstellar, explored the possibility of using wormholes for time travel. He noted that traversable wormholes, in theory, could connect 2 points in time, but they also flirt dangerously with paradox. Imagine you send a message through a wormhole into the past, warning yourself not to send the message. That's the classic grandfather paradox. But the wormhole loop theory suggests something else, that paradoxes are illusions. Because the universe doesn't allow changes, it allows loops. Everything is self-consistent. You won't prevent the message. You will send it, because you already did. The past is already written, and the future is only the path back to it. There are implications for memory, too. Imagine people who pass near or through these wormholes without even knowing. Not traveling physically, but being bathed in the fringe effects of warped space-time. Their neurons subtly affected. their memories laced with echoes of their future selves. Suddenly, déjà vu is not mystical. It's neurological evidence of temporal resonance, the past remembering the future, the present remembering what hasn't happened yet. In a scenario like this, fate could become measurable, predictable, inescapable. Picture a scientist, working alone, discovers a stable micro-wormhole in a quantum lab experiment. They receive a message through it, a formula, perfectly correct, from someone claiming to be their future self. They use the formula to stabilize the wormhole and send the message back in time. It loops forever. The knowledge never originated anywhere. It simply exists, sustained by the loop. No beginning, no end. This is called a causal loop. And it's not just fantasy, it's a recognized concept in theoretical physics. So what happens when humans interact with loops like these? Could we eventually become aware of them? Could déjà vu be the first warning sign that we are caught? Would we begin to see the same patterns, hear the same sentences, experience relationships before they even begin? And more frighteningly, could we ever escape? What if every déjà vu, every uncanny repeat of a moment, isn't your brain misfiring, but your consciousness recognizing a loop? What if every instinct not to go somewhere, every chilling premonition, is a residue of a loop in which you already did and didn't survive? This theory changes everything, because time, as we know it, isn't a straight line. It's a woven mesh of events, folding over and through itself. Wormholes could make those folds permanent, and in that fold, your life may not be the first iteration. It may be the 100th, and you may already know how it ends. And if you're still skeptical, consider this. In 2003, physicist Richard Gödel proposed that if the universe is shaped a certain way, it may already contain naturally occurring time loops, closed time-like curves, without needing wormholes. That means the loops may already exist. We just haven't recognized them yet. So next time you feel a moment replay, a flicker of future memory, stop and look around. You may not be living a new day. You may just be living the same one. Again. Quantum time loops, post-selection. A particle exists in two places at once, then it doesn't. A photon seems to know which path it will take before it's even measured. A choice made in the future appears to ripple backward, rewriting what we thought was already fixed. Welcome to the strange frontier of quantum mechanics, where time, causality, and choice begin to unravel, and where the idea of quantum time loops challenges everything we know about reality. In the classical world, time is a relentless arrow, forever marching forward. Cause precedes effect. The present emerges from the past and pushes into the future. But in the quantum realm, the rules bend. And sometimes, they snap. Let's start with something deceptively simple, the double-slit experiment. A single particle, a photon or electron, is fired at a barrier with two slits, and a screen records where it lands. If you don't observe which slit it goes through, an interference pattern appears. Waves overlapping waves. But if you do observe it, try to catch it in the act, it chooses a definite path. The wave collapses. The interference disappears. It's as if the act of measurement retroactively changes the particle's past. It didn't just go through one slit or the other, it existed in a quantum superposition, both and neither, until your observation forced it to pick a story. And here's where things get eerie. When you delay your measurement, decide after the particle has passed the slits, its behavior still changes. It's as though your future decision reached back into the past and influenced the particle's earlier behavior. This is the heart of quantum post-selection. In normal experiments, you prepare a system, let it evolve, and then measure the outcome. But in post-selection, you also choose which outcomes to keep. You say, I only care about the cases where the particle ends up here. Then you analyze the rest of the system, as if that final condition had always been true. This sounds innocent, just filtering data, right? But in the quantum world, it's like reaching back through time and whispering instructions into the system's ear. Suddenly things that should have been random aren't. Probabilities skew. Correlations emerge. It feels like the future is shaping the past. Consider the quantum teleportation protocol. Two particles are entangled. You perform a measurement on one of them, and depending on the result, you post-select cases where the measurement yields a certain outcome. What you find is staggering. It's as if the particle that was measured long ago already knew how it would be collapsed, before you even made the choice. Your act of selecting an outcome seems to enforce consistency backward in time. Or, take the Aharonov-Vaidman three-box paradox. You prepare a quantum particle in a superposition of being in three boxes, A, B, and C. You later measure and post-select only the cases where the particle is found in a certain final state. But if you check, mid-experiment, whether the particle is in box A, it's there with certainty. Check box B, also there, with certainty. But it cannot be in two places at once when measured. Something strange is happening. Post-selection is altering how the past probabilities unfold, enforcing a future condition that twists the logic of before and after. Some physicists argue that this isn't just mathematical coincidence. It's a hint that time itself may be bidirectional at the quantum level, that particles don't simply evolve forward through time, but instead are governed by boundary conditions, past and future both playing equal roles in shaping the present. It's called the two-state vector formalism. The system is described not just by a wave function moving forward from the past, but also by another wave function traveling backward from the future. Together, they form a complete picture. This isn't just abstract speculation. It has experimental teeth. Quantum computers, for example, rely on principles of superposition and entanglement, but certain algorithms are being developed that exploit post-selection to boost computational power in ways that seem, frankly, unfair. They compute as if they already know the answer. It's like solving a maze by saying, "I'll only keep the attempts that end at the exit." And somehow, magically, the particle finds its way through, no matter how tangled the maze. Now, let's take this one step deeper, into the concept of quantum time loops. Imagine a particle measured at two moments, once in the past and again in the future. In post-selected quantum systems, it's possible to design scenarios where these two measurements are entangled, not just in space, but across time. The future outcome constrains what the earlier state must have been. It's a loop, not in space, but causality. These time loops don't violate relativity. They're not about faster-than-light travel or paradoxes like killing your grandfather. They're subtler, stranger. They suggest that events don't simply unfold, but conspire towards certain ends. That the universe might be more like a completed film reel than a live broadcast, where every frame, past and future, is already woven into a coherent story. You just happen to experience it in a linear way. And yet, this idea comes with a price. If the future can shape the past, what happens to free will? Are we just playing out roles already written? Or does quantum indeterminacy still leave room for choice within the boundaries of consistency? The debate rages on. Some physicists argue that post-selection is just clever math, not evidence of retrocausality. Others say we're glimpsing a deeper truth, that time, as we experience it, is an illusion, and quantum systems are whispering secrets we're only beginning to hear. But maybe the strangest part of all is this: quantum post-selection works. It's real. It's testable. It's been demonstrated in labs, and yet it defies our everyday understanding of how cause and effect should behave. So the next time you think of time as a straight line, remember, there are particles out there, right now, whose behavior suggests otherwise. Particles that appear to be guided not just by what was, but by what will be. Particles that exist in loops of influence, where the end shapes the beginning. And maybe, just maybe, we do too. Tipler Cylinder. Imagine a machine so powerful, so massive, that it doesn't just stretch the fabric of space. It twists time itself into a spiral. A theoretical object born not from science fiction, but from real physics. A rotating titan that could, under the right circumstances, allow someone to travel through time without ever leaving the physical universe. No wormholes, no paradoxical portals, just pure gravitational force wrapped around a secret of the cosmos. This is the Tipler Cylinder. Proposed by physicist Frank J. Tipler in 1974, the concept is based on the general theory of relativity. Einstein taught us that mass curves space, but spin, when added to massive objects, can do something even more exotic. It can drag space and time around with it. This is called frame dragging. It's not just theory. We've measured this effect near Earth using satellites like Gravity Probe B. But the Tipler cylinder takes this concept to the extreme. Tipler imagined a cylinder, infinitely long, unimaginably dense, and rotating at nearly the speed of light. The sheer mass and velocity would twist space-time around the cylinder into tight loops. If someone were to fly in a very specific trajectory around this spinning behemoth, they could theoretically enter a closed time-like curve. In other words, they could go backwards in time, return to their own past, without breaking any of the known laws of physics. Let that sink in. A machine that doesn't cheat physics. It bends them. Carefully, precisely, and totally. But there's a catch. Several, in fact. The cylinder must be infinitely long. That's not poetic exaggeration. For the equations to work without breaking causality or triggering catastrophic singularities, the cylinder can't have an end. It must stretch on forever. That alone takes the idea from theoretical to nearly impossible. In our finite universe, nothing can be infinite in size or mass. And even if we somehow found a workaround, building something with that much density, rotating at near light speed, would be like trying to balance a black hole on the edge of a razor. Still, the concept remains. Untouchable, yet tantalizing. Because even if it can't be built, it reveals something crucial. That time, as strange and irreversible as it seems, might not be absolute. That the rules we think are unbreakable could bend under the right conditions. Let's explore the implications. Suppose we somehow built a Tipler cylinder, or approximated one with extreme precision. What then? Would we send probes back into the past? Would we use it to correct errors, to warn ourselves, to relive tragedies and prevent them? Or would we fall victim to the same paradoxes we fear in every time travel tale? What happens if you use the cylinder to go back in time and destroy the cylinder before it was built? The very structure that made your journey possible. Do you cease to exist? Does time unravel? Or does the universe correct itself? Physicists like Kip Thorne have argued that nature might have built-in safety mechanisms, quantum instabilities or energy limits that prevent time machines from ever truly forming. Stephen Hawking even proposed a chronology protection conjecture, suggesting the laws of physics prevent closed time-like curves from forming in any practical sense. But the Tipler cylinder exists in the realm of pure mathematics, where such protections can be skirted, at least on paper. Think of the human implications. Let's say a version of the cylinder, smaller but powerful enough, is orbiting a star far beyond our reach. An ancient artifact left behind by a long-dead civilization. We find it. We study it. And one by one, we begin to experiment. The first person goes in and vanishes. Minutes later, they return, younger, wiser, carrying knowledge of events that haven't happened yet, or worse, traumatized by futures that can't be avoided. Would we trust such a device? Would governments try to weaponize it? Would we become addicted to time, no longer moving forward, but circling endlessly around regrets and possibilities? The Tipler cylinder isn't just a machine, it's a mirror, showing us our obsession with control over fate. The terrifying part is that it doesn't violate general relativity. It doesn't need fantasy or magic. It's just math. Equations that say, under extreme conditions, time can be curved like space, and once curved, it can loop. Once looped, it can trap. A prison of memory and motion. Some theorists have suggested alternatives. Instead of an infinite cylinder, perhaps a very long one, combined with exotic matter, substances with negative energy, could simulate the effect. Others suggest using cosmic strings, hypothetical defects in space-time itself, to produce similar frame dragging. But each idea bumps up against limits. Energy requirements that exceed all matter in the known universe, instability that destroys the machine before it ever functions, or quantum effects that prevent time travel altogether. Yet, the allure remains. Because at its core, the Tipler cylinder is not just a theoretical construct. It's a question, a challenge. Can the universe fold in on itself and survive? Can causality be twisted without snapping? What the Tipler cylinder offers us is not a blueprint for a time machine, but a warning. That time, under the wrong conditions, is not a river. It's a whirlpool. And if you spin space-time fast enough, reality might not just bend, it might break. So, next time you think of time as a simple ticking clock, remember the spinning cylinder, the infinite titan swirling through the cosmos, daring you to fly close. Would you do it? Would you enter the loop? And if you did, would you ever find your way out? Let me know if the Novikov self-consistency principle In the mysterious theater of time travel, where imagination meets equations, there's a concept so strange, so paradox-proof, that it rewrites how we think about fate, freedom, and the very nature of reality. It's not a sci-fi invention. It's a real theoretical principle in physics. Its name is the Novikov self-consistency principle. Imagine a universe where time travel is possible. Imagine stepping into a machine, flying backward into the past, and arriving on the day before everything went wrong. Your instinct? Change it. Stop the tragedy. Save the loved one. Prevent the war. But here's the twist. No matter what you do, you won't succeed in changing the past. Not because you're not clever enough, or fast enough, or brave enough, but because the universe simply won't allow it. The Novikov self-consistency principle ensures that any action taken by a time traveler was always part of history. You can visit the past, you can observe it, you can even participate in it, but you cannot alter it in any way that leads to a paradox. Whatever you do in the past, it has to be consistent with the future you came from. This principle was proposed by Russian physicist Igor Dmitrievich Novikov in the 1980s as an answer to the great riddle of time travel paradoxes. Because the moment you allow backward time travel, you crack open a Pandora's box of impossible situations. What if you kill your grandfather before your parent was born? What if you hand yourself the blueprint to a time machine without ever having invented it? These contradictions tear at the fabric of logic, but Novikov's answer is chillingly elegant. Paradoxes are forbidden, not by rules, but by the laws of physics themselves. Let's take a closer look. Say you drop a billiard ball into a wormhole, one that curves through space-time and emerges in the past. Now, imagine that the ball exits the wormhole and knocks its earlier self off course, preventing it from ever entering the wormhole in the first place. That's a classic paradox. But in a universe governed by the Novikov principle, that cannot happen. What can happen is this. The ball goes into the wormhole, emerges in the past, and nudges its younger self just slightly, so that the deflection is exactly what causes it to enter the wormhole in the first place. No contradiction, no paradox. A perfect loop. The cause becomes the effect. The effect becomes the cause. Everything aligns. It's not about free will anymore. It's about consistency. You are not forbidden from acting. You're simply confined to actions that already occurred. And if you attempt to change the past, something will stop you. The gun jams, the door locks. You slip on a step, or maybe, just maybe, you realize you were always part of the history you wanted to rewrite. You didn't stop the tragedy, you caused it. This idea rewires how we think about time. The past is not a set of events waiting to be changed. It's a locked puzzle where every piece fits perfectly, even the pieces you carry from the future. You're not the author of history. You're a character in it. Now consider the implications. What if you receive a mysterious book in the mail, a manual for building a time machine? You follow it. It works. You build the machine, travel back, and hand the manual to your younger self. Who wrote it? Nobody. The manual exists in a self-contained loop. It has no origin, no first creator. It exists because it exists. That's the heart of the Novikov principle. Information, objects, even people can be trapped in time loops, eternally consistent, with no paradoxical beginnings or ends. It's strange. It's uncomfortable. And yet, it might be the only way backward time travel makes sense, without tearing logic to shreds. Some physicists argue that if closed time-like curves, those theoretical paths through space-time that loop into the past, can exist, then they must be subject to Novikov's rule. Consistency is the price of possibility. But what about choice? What about agency? If you go back in time and discover you were always there, does that mean you never had a choice? That your decisions are illusions, playing out a script already written? Maybe. Or maybe it means something more terrifying, that free will exists, but only in directions that don't disrupt the loop. You're free to act, as long as your actions align with what already happened. And if they don't, they simply won't succeed. In fiction, this shows up in subtle and devastating ways. A time traveler trying to stop an accident ends up being the very person who causes it. A hero returns to change history, only to find their every step ensured the timeline they wanted to undo. Tragedy becomes fate. Justice becomes inevitability. The Novikov principle makes the past a fortress with unbreakable walls. You can walk its halls, but you cannot rebuild them. Yet, in all of this determinism, there's a strange kind of beauty, a symmetry, a cosmic coherence. The universe in this model protects itself from contradiction. It's not random, it's precise. Every loop closes, every knot tightens, and in that closure, there's a kind of narrative perfection. But here's the haunting question. What if we are already inside one of these loops? What if something from the future shaped our past? And we'll never know because the timeline is already consistent. What if your decisions tomorrow are shaped by things that will happen a year from now? Could that be why déjà vu feels like memory leaking backward? The Novikov self-consistency principle doesn't just change our understanding of time travel, it changes our relationship with time itself. It says the universe remembers. It says the timeline is not a canvas to be painted over, but a tapestry already woven, each thread looping back on itself with precision. And in that universe, the most profound question may not be, can I change the past? But what part of the past was I always meant to fulfill? Eternal return, Nietzsche. Imagine a moment, right now, this exact moment, the air you breathe, the position of your hands, the thoughts echoing in your mind. Now imagine this moment returning, again and again and again, forever. Not just a memory, not just a dream, but a complete return of your entire life, in every detail, with every triumph, every failure, every heartbreak, and every joy, repeated endlessly across the vast expanse of eternity. This is the idea of eternal return, or eternal recurrence, posed by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. But it is not a theory of physics. It is not a scientific prediction. It is a philosophical hammer, forged to shatter the complacency of existence, to confront us with a terrifying question. If you had to live this exact life over, infinitely, would you curse your fate or embrace it? Nietzsche didn't offer eternal return as a gentle meditation. He presented it as a challenge, a test of your soul. Picture this. A demon whispers in your ear and tells you that every second of your life must repeat exactly for all eternity. Not once more, not 1,000 times, but an infinite number of times. Would you fall to your knees in despair, or would you rise joyfully and declare that no greater truth could exist? Eternal return is not just about the afterlife. It is about this life. It is about radical responsibility. It says, you cannot escape your actions. You cannot hide behind time, because time will not move forward. It will circle back. And everything you have done, you will do again, forever. And the deeper terror is not just the repetition. It is that nothing changes. Your betrayals return. Your failures return. The words you regret saying and the moments you wish you could have stopped, each comes back with absolute fidelity. No edits, no mercy, no do-overs. But why did Nietzsche propose such a harrowing idea? Because he wanted to wake us up, to tear us away from the illusion that time will save us, that tomorrow will redeem what we ruined today, that somewhere, somehow, there is escape. Eternal return says, there is no escape. There is only your life. And the way you live it is the way it will always be lived. Imagine waking up with the knowledge that every choice you make today will not just ripple through the rest of your life, but will echo through eternity, endlessly replaying. The love you give, the anger you show, the courage you muster, or fail to muster. This isn't punishment. It's a mirror, one held so close you can no longer look away. And perhaps the most devastating part is this. The question Nietzsche asked is not whether eternal return is literally true. It's whether it might as well be. Because if you would not will your life to return, if you would not embrace its repetition, then why are you living it at all? There is a concept hidden within Nietzsche's challenge, amor fati, love of fate, to love not only the good parts of life, but all of it, To say yes to existence not because it is easy or kind or fair, but because it is yours. Would you live differently if you knew every moment would return? Would you treat a stranger more gently, knowing you'd always treat them that way? Would you speak more truthfully, knowing you're bound to speak those same words forever? Now picture the opposite, a life lived half asleep, small cruelties, wasted time, compromises made from fear, lies told to keep the peace. Imagine being condemned to that life, not just once, But endlessly. Nietzsche does not comfort us. He dares us. He asks, are you strong enough to live a life you'd choose again? Could you face yourself, not just in memory, but in recurrence? And if not, then what must you change so that you could? The idea is deeply personal. It doesn't demand belief. It demands confrontation. If you recoil at the thought of reliving your life, that revulsion is a signal, a guidepost. Not a cosmic judgment, but a personal truth. And that truth can break you, or it can rebuild you. There are echoes of eternal return across cultures. The Hindu and Buddhist concepts of samsara, the cycle of rebirth, share a similar structure. But Nietzsche strips away the mystical. There is no karma, no enlightenment, just the stark possibility of return. And you, alone, choosing to live a life worthy of repeating. This is why eternal return is not merely a thought experiment. It's a spiritual furnace, a call to arms. Because if you accept it, if you truly accept it, it becomes the most powerful force imaginable. Every choice gains weight. Every moment becomes sacred. The smallest acts matter forever. Nietzsche once said, my formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. So ask yourself, if the clock were reset and your life second repeating, unchanging, unbroken, would you smile or would you scream? Lies the map to your soul. Black hole feedback loop. You've probably heard the saying, what goes into a black hole never comes out. It's comforting, in a way, final. A clean break from the universe as we know it. But what if that isn't true? What if falling into a black hole isn't the end, but the beginning of something far more disturbing? Imagine a scenario where you dive into a black hole, and instead of being torn apart, instead of vanishing into nothingness, you re-emerge. But not in the future, not in some distant galaxy. You come back into your own past. This is not science fiction. This is a theoretical but terrifyingly possible consequence of how space-time might behave near certain types of black holes. It's called the black hole feedback loop. And it's exactly what it sounds like. A cosmic treadmill where time, space, and destiny become trapped in an endless cycle. Let's begin with what we know. A black hole is not a hole at all. It's a region of space where matter has collapsed so densely that its gravity is inescapable. Cross the event horizon, the point of no return, and you are no longer part of the visible universe. You fall inward. The laws of physics break down. Time stretches. Space twists. The singularity at the center waits. But that's for the simplest kind of black hole. Real black holes are messier, rotating, charged, warped by forces we barely understand. One type in particular, called a Kerr black hole, doesn't just suck things in. It twists them. It warps space-time around itself like a spoon stirring honey. And in its core, there's not just a singularity, there's a ring. A rotating, infinite ring of compressed mass. A region where physics takes on a new shape entirely. Now, here's the kicker. Theoretical physics tells us that it may be possible to pass through this ring singularity without being destroyed. That on the other side of a Kerr black hole lies a white hole, the mirror image, a place where nothing can enter, only exit. And if the geometry lines up just right, if the universe is curved in just the right way, what comes out might come out in the past. Let that sink in. An object falling into a black hole could emerge, intact, before it even entered. Welcome to the feedback loop. Now picture this. An explorer ship is lost near the event horizon of a rapidly spinning black hole. As it spirals in, onboard systems record the distortion of time, minutes outside or hours inside. The crew, terrified, watches stars twist into lines. But instead of being crushed, the ship crosses into the inner region, and in a flash, is spit back out. 2 years before its mission ever began. They crash land on a planet they haven't even visited yet. They send out a distress signal, and somewhere in deep space, their past selves hear it, and respond. They launch the mission to find the source of that signal, thus beginning the exact same chain of events. Again, and again, and again. This is not just a time loop. It's a self-sustaining cycle of causality. Every step reinforces the last. A cosmic bootstrapping paradox. Now, Let's take a real-world example. The Penrose process, named after physicist Roger Penrose, proposes a way to extract energy from a rotating black hole. In this process, particles could enter the ergosphere, the region just outside the event horizon, split, and part of that energy could escape, potentially carrying more energy than it entered with. This isn't magic, it's mathematics, and it implies something profound. Motion near a spinning black hole can be so extreme that time itself is twisted. You're no longer simply moving through space, you're sliding across layers of time. What if something enters this system, not a particle, but a person? A message? A memory? What if that memory comes out the other side and reaches a point in time before it was created? We already see echoes of this idea in quantum experiments. Retrocausality, the notion that events in the future can affect outcomes in the past, isn't just a fringe theory anymore. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics allow for it. Combine this with the time-altering effects of rotating black holes, and you get a disturbing possibility. That black holes could be natural time machines, not to travel the universe, but to trap consciousness in an endless cycle of self-reinforcing events. You may be asking, why don't we see this happening? Why doesn't someone fall into a black hole and show up in the past, changing history? And the answer may be that they can't change anything. In a feedback loop, you're not altering the timeline, you're fulfilling it. Every action you take already happened. That ship sent the distress signal because it always would. The loop protects itself. History is not rewritten, it is relived. Now take this further. Imagine your thoughts, your very mind, passing near one of these rotating gravitational wells. Could your memories loop before you do? Could you feel a sense of déjà vu so intense it borders on prophecy? Could your decisions be influenced by echoes of a past that hasn't occurred? And if you fall into that loop, do you ever truly escape? The black hole feedback loop may be nature's way of enforcing cosmic recursion, of binding causality so tightly that time folds like origami. A person trapped in such a loop might never realize it, might experience life as linear, while outside observers see them caught in endless repetition. Some theories suggest entire regions of the universe could be experiencing this now. Galaxies orbiting supermassive black holes at their core, spewing jets of particles light years long, jets that may be carrying energy not just across space, but across time. In 2019, astronomers observed a mysterious repeating signal from a galaxy 500 million light-years away. Fast radio bursts, occurring every 16 days like clockwork. We still don't know what causes them, but what if the source is something trapped in a time loop? Something caught between the jaws of a black hole, screaming out its echo forever? This is the haunting part. The black hole feedback loop doesn't require sci-fi technology or aliens. It could already exist. We might be seeing the aftershocks, feeling the tremors in our own perception, a memory you can't place, a conversation you swear already happened, a moment where everything feels scripted, like you're acting out lines you didn't write. Maybe you are. Maybe you've already fallen. And maybe, just maybe, that déjà vu you keep feeling isn't coincidence. It's the edge of the loop, the whisper of a black hole, calling you back. Simulation reset loops. You wake up with a strange feeling, déjà vu. Something familiar, yet untraceable. A pattern you can't quite name. You shrug it off. Coincidence, maybe. But what if it isn't? What if your entire life, this very moment, is the latest version of a simulation that's been restarted again and again? Not because of you, but because somewhere, something is waiting for the right outcome. Welcome to the haunting idea of simulation reset loops. In the world of computer science, a simulation is only as useful as its ability to converge on a desired result. Whether it's modeling weather patterns, running AI learning algorithms, or testing the trajectory of a spacecraft, simulations are restarted countless times. The failed iterations are discarded. The process resets. Try again. Learn. Refine. Until success. Now take that concept. Scale it up. Way up. Imagine reality itself, our universe, our existence, as a simulation, a construct. And somewhere beyond this veil of matter and light, an intelligence is watching. Not watching passively, but intervening, resetting, recalibrating, refining, until the simulated world produces the outcome they want. It sounds like science fiction, but the idea is rooted in real philosophical and scientific inquiry. The simulation hypothesis, made famous by philosopher Nick Bostrom, proposes that if a civilization becomes advanced enough, it will possess the computational power to run simulations of entire universes, complete with conscious beings. If that's true, and if even a fraction of those civilizations run such simulations, then statistically, it's more likely that we are inside one than not. But the reset loop concept pushes this further. It suggests that we're not just inside a simulation. We're inside a learning simulation, a test. And when the test fails, the system rolls everything back, restarts. Not from scratch, but from key checkpoints, like a video game reloading after death. Like an AI restarting after hitting a wall. Imagine this. A major war breaks out. The result is extinction. The simulation fails, reset, back to an earlier point. Try again. This time, maybe a political leader dies unexpectedly. Maybe a scientific breakthrough happens sooner. The world veers off the old path, and history unfolds differently. If that outcome also fails to meet criteria, reset again. What criteria? That's the unnerving part. We don't know. Maybe the goal is to produce a peaceful society, or a technological singularity. Maybe it's the development of artificial general intelligence. Or maybe it's something else entirely, an emergent property of consciousness, a universal signal, a pattern they're trying to extract. But until that outcome occurs, we remain stuck in the loop. And how would we know if it's happening? The signs, if they exist, would be subtle. Maybe it's the Mandela effect. Millions of people remembering events that, according to all records, never occurred. Maybe it's patterns in dreams, flashes of past lives that never were. Perhaps it's déjà vu, the nagging sense that you've done this before, said this exact thing before. A memory not from this version of the timeline, but from a previous loop, seared into your neural wiring like a ghost in the code. Then there are the glitches, moments that defy logic, people disappearing without explanation, events that feel scripted, coincidences stacked too perfectly to be chance, statistical anomalies that don't make sense in a purely random universe. These could be compression artifacts, leftovers from a previous cycle, unresolved variables bleeding into the next run. Now, take a look at natural selection, evolution, and the progression of civilizations. What if every extinction event, every collapse, wasn't just nature, but a reset trigger? Dinosaurs dominated for millions of years, then gone, replaced by mammals leading to humans. Was that reset number one? Were there others? Lost civilizations, wiped clean? What if Atlantis, Lemuria, or other mythical golden ages weren't myths at all, but previous cycles, scrubbed out and reloaded? The technological rise of humanity is another potential inflection point. We're developing quantum computers, AI, genetic manipulation, planetary engineering. Are we reaching the simulation's test threshold? Are we approaching the event that either passes the criteria or fails it, triggering yet another loop? In machine learning, this process is called reinforcement through post-outcome feedback. You try something. It fails. You try again. The system adjusts parameters until the output aligns with the desired reward. If our reality works the same way, then each version of Earth is a test run, a lesson, an iteration. When humanity hits a dead end, nuclear war, ecological collapse, AI rebellion, it's not the end of time. It's just the end of that time. Roll back. Reset. Begin again. What's terrifying is the implication that you might not be the first you, that your memories, your life, your relationships may have happened in 100 slightly different ways before. And if the simulation doesn't work this time, if we, as a species, don't reach the intended result, it will all be erased again. And you'll live again, unknowingly, from the beginning, over and over. But there's another side to this idea. A strange, beautiful side. If the simulation is iterating toward perfection, toward peace, transcendence, enlightenment, then perhaps every reset brings us closer. Maybe every failure teaches the system something. And maybe you are part of that refinement. Your choices, your insight, your impact could be a critical variable in breaking the cycle. Maybe it's not about controlling everything. Maybe it's about someone, somewhere, making the right decision at the right moment. That one unexpected anomaly the system wasn't prepared for. A wild card, a glitch that saves the simulation from its endless repetition. What would that mean for free will? If we're in a loop, do we have choice? Or are we just ghosts trapped in an eternal retry button? Maybe the answer lies in quantum randomness, in the noise between inputs, the chaos in every human heart. Maybe the simulation needs free will to work, because without it, there are no true tests, no meaning. So, here you are, in a world that might be a shadow of 100 failed worlds, a simulation haunted by its own history. And you might never know for sure. The system is clean, efficient. Every reset wipes the memory. Every loop feels like the first. But somewhere, in the cracks of consciousness, you remember, just enough to ask the question, what if this isn't the first time? And more importantly, what if it's the last? Alien looping signal theory. Imagine a radio signal, strange, artificial, and undeniably alien, reaching Earth from the depths of space. Scientists scrambled to decode it, believing it to be a message from an extraterrestrial intelligence. But here's the twist. The signal isn't just coming from another star system, it's coming from our future. And somehow, impossibly, it's looping back in time, not just across years, but across centuries, perhaps even millennia. This is the alien looping signal theory, a mind-bending idea that blends astrophysics, time theory, and the terrifying possibility that our cosmic neighbors have been trying to contact us, long before we ever invented the technology to listen. Let's unpack this. In 1977, astronomers at Ohio State University recorded what became known as the wow signal, a mysterious burst of radio energy that lasted 72 seconds. It was narrowband, non-repeating, and unlike anything emitted by natural sources. It never repeated. We still don't know where it came from. But what if that signal wasn't just from another planet, but from another time? In the alien looping signal theory, we consider the possibility that an advanced civilization, perhaps 1 billion of years ahead of us, has mastered not just interstellar communication, but temporal communication. In other words, they've figured out how to send information through the fabric of space-time itself back into the past. Now ask yourself, if such a civilization could do this, why would they? What message would be so important that it needs to echo backward through time? One theory suggests it's a warning. Maybe they detected a catastrophic event, an extinction-level impact, a cosmic threat, or a technological disaster. One that, if stopped early enough, could be avoided. But if the danger is universal or recurring, say, a black hole drifting silently toward a planetary system, they might try to reach not just their past, but anyone's past. Any intelligent species capable of listening. And here's where it gets truly strange. What if Earth's ancient civilizations, those we consider lost, primitive, and disconnected from modern science, had once received such a signal? Could ancient stone tablets, oral traditions, or even religious myths be distorted interpretations of alien messages? A signal looping again and again, always misunderstood, always arriving too soon? Look at the anomalies. The Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, has long been rumored to possess ancient knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible without a telescope. Some believe this knowledge could have come from celestial messages. Ancient Sumerian texts describe beings descending from the heavens bearing knowledge and warnings. Cultures separated by oceans all share myths of beings from the sky, bringing gifts, knowledge, or ominous prophecies. Could these be echoes of a looping alien signal sent again and again through time, hoping someone, someday, will understand? Let's dive deeper. How could a signal be sent through time? In theoretical physics, certain conditions, like strong gravitational fields near rotating black holes or engineered wormholes, might allow information to loop back in time. Just like frame dragging near a Tipler cylinder or closed Timelike curves, the right geometry of spacetime might act as a cosmic feedback loop. Imagine an alien transmitter orbiting a black hole, harnessing relativistic effects to distort time. It sends a signal outward, but the curve of spacetime wraps the signal around, dragging it into the past relative to distant observers. From our perspective, the signal doesn't just travel across light years, it arrives before it was sent. This isn't magic, it's math. Cold, beautiful, terrifying math. What would that signal sound like? Maybe it's disguised as cosmic background noise. Maybe it's embedded in repeating fast radio bursts, those mysterious high-energy pulses we still can't explain. Or maybe it's buried in quantum fluctuations, waiting for a civilization advanced enough to decode entangled particles through time. Now, picture this. A future version of humanity faces extinction. We've exhausted our resources. AI has spiraled out of control. Or maybe something darker, an alien threat we provoked. In desperation, we build a machine to transmit knowledge into the past. Equations, coordinates, warnings. We aim it not at ourselves, but at the cradle of our own civilization, hoping to awaken humanity earlier, wiser. But the signal gets scattered, diluted, fractured through history, misinterpreted as myth, scripture, or madness, or worse. We're not the ones sending the signal. What if this signal is a test, a way for alien civilizations to filter intelligence? Only those who can decode a temporally warped message are deemed advanced enough for contact. Everyone else is ignored. Imagine the implications. We're not waiting to make first contact. We're trying to earn it without even knowing. Think of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For decades, we've scanned the skies, listening for something obvious. But what if alien civilizations don't send obvious messages? What if they speak in paradoxes, knowing only those who grasp the nonlinear nature of time can understand? And what if, right now, that signal is playing? Not in the future, not from a star system far away, but in our oceans of static, our misunderstood frequencies, our ancient scriptures. Hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when our understanding catches up to the message. The alien looping signal theory isn't just a concept about extraterrestrial life. It's a challenge to our perception of time, intelligence, and history itself. It asks whether we are the recipients of a message or the origin. Whether we are waiting for the aliens to call, or if they've already called, and we miss the ring. Over and over again. The question isn't just, are we alone? It's, have we been warned? And if we have, will we listen in time? DNA temporal memory theory. There is a strange idea, one that lingers just beyond the boundaries of conventional biology and accepted physics. An idea so quietly unsettling, it forces us to question not only who we are, but how we remember. Not just in the mind, but in the very fabric of our cells. The theory is called DNA temporal memory, and it suggests something extraordinary, that our biological code, our DNA, might remember time loops. Not metaphorically, not through ancestral stories or instinctual behaviors, but literally. The atoms of our being might retain imprints from cycles of time we've already lived through. If time is not a straight line but a loop, a spiral, a repetition of moments across vast cosmic cycles, then perhaps evolution itself has been walking through those loops. Not blindly, but with a kind of subtle awareness. A hidden memory etched into the double helix. Consider the idea that our universe isn't a one-way ride from Big Bang to heat death, but a looped journey, a recurring cycle where time folds in on itself. What if after trillions of years, the universe resets and begins again? If that's true, then everything, every breath, every cell division, every mistake has already happened before, again and again. But here's the twist. Maybe life isn't just repeating. Maybe it's learning. Maybe our DNA is a vessel, not just for genetic inheritance, but for temporal inheritance. Imagine evolution not as a straight march of progress, but as a spiral staircase circling the same moments across infinite repetitions. Each pass through the loop leaves a faint echo, a bruise on reality. And maybe, just maybe, DNA can sense it, can absorb it, can adapt to it, not in one lifetime, but over thousands. Millions, across cosmic reboots. What if the reason certain species adapt so swiftly isn't just environmental pressure, but residual knowledge? What if survival itself is an act of memory? Let's explore an example. Take migratory birds. Some species travel thousands of miles with precision, year after year, without being taught. The route is not learned, it's inherited. We call it instinct. But what if instinct is a form of memory from a previous temporal cycle? What if, in some earlier version of the universe, the birds learned their route the hard way, through loss, through trial, and that knowledge burned itself into their DNA, ready for the next loop? Extend that logic to humans. The uncanny fear of deep water, the strange fascination with fire, the sense of déjà vu in places you've never visited. Could these be echoes, not of ancestral experience, but of your own past lives, lived in earlier cycles of the universe? DNA temporal memory. Theory doesn't suggest we remember specific events. It's not reincarnation, it's not mystical, it's biological. Subtle adjustments in genetic code, made possible not by natural selection alone, but by an echo of experience carried forward through time. Now, this isn't accepted science. It's speculative, bold, but it builds on real concepts: epigenetics, evolutionary biology, and the notion of a cyclic universe. In epigenetics, we already know that trauma can alter gene expression and be passed to future generations. Children of Holocaust survivors show biological markers of inherited stress. That's not philosophy, that's biochemistry. Now imagine extending that principle across time loops. What if, instead of one traumatic generation, you had an entire universe's worth of encoded trauma or wisdom? You might ask, how would DNA remember time cycles? One idea lies in quantum coherence. Some theorists propose that quantum systems within cells, perhaps in DNA itself, could entangle across timelines. In other words, particles in your body might have interacted with their counterparts in previous versions of the universe, not metaphorically, physically. And through that entanglement, a memory, fragile, incomplete, but real, might persist. That would make DNA not just a biological instruction manual, but a temporal recording device. The implications are staggering. Evolution would no longer be a blind process. It would be iterative in the truest sense, learning not just from genetic mutations, but from cosmic cycles. The very code of life might be optimized not only for survival, but for recurring conditions. Traits could emerge faster because they have already emerged before. Intelligence might evolve quicker, not because it's inevitable, but because it's remembered. It would explain strange leaps in evolution, rapid bursts of development, why certain organs, like the human brain, evolved far beyond the minimum necessary for survival. Maybe consciousness itself is a byproduct of this memory, an evolutionary advantage not only in one timeline, but across many. And here's the most haunting possibility of all. If DNA remembers, then perhaps extinction does too. If a species dies out in one cycle, the DNA of survivors might carry the echo of that loss into the next. Fear of predators, the urgency to migrate, the instinct to hide. Maybe it's not just evolution. Maybe it's history trying to correct itself. But what would this mean for us, right now? Maybe some of our strangest instincts, our deepest fears, our unexplainable drives, are echoes of choices we've made countless times before. Maybe you've stood at the same crossroads in a different loop, and your DNA remembers which path led to ruin or salvation. You feel it as a gut reaction, but it's deeper than gut. It's molecular. You are a book written in protein and sugar, wrapped in time. Each chapter a remix of the last. Each decision a dance with patterns older than the stars. Memory echo loops. You walk into a room you've never seen before, yet something feels familiar. The smell, the light, the exact arrangement of shadows on the wall. For a split second, your body freezes. You know what someone is about to say. You know how it ends. Then, just as quickly, the sensation fades, leaving only confusion in its place. We call it déjà vu, the eerie, momentary conviction that we've lived a moment before. But what if it's more than just a glitch in the brain? What if that whisper of familiarity is something else entirely, an echo from a previous cycle? This is the chilling idea behind memory echo loops, the theory that déjà vu might not be a cognitive hiccup, but a leftover fragment from a prior loop of reality, a memory that wasn't erased completely when the universe, or your life, reset itself. What if time doesn't only move forward? What if it bends back? What if existence is not a straight line, but a loop, endlessly coiled, and occasionally pieces of what once was bleed through the veil into what is? Imagine reality as a program. Every life, every timeline, every choice, running like code. Now imagine that program glitches. It restarts, reboots, but something doesn't wipe clean. A shadow of memory remains, just a trace, a whisper of a previous run-through. You're not supposed to remember, but sometimes you do. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel it. That is déjà vu, reinterpreted through the lens of memory echo loops. Consider this. You meet a stranger, and instantly you feel as though you've known them forever. You even predict how they'll react, how they'll smile, how they'll speak. You chalk it up to coincidence. Chemistry. But what if, in another loop of reality, you did know them? What if your consciousness carries a faint imprint of a bond that once existed, now erased? Déjà vu isn't the only symptom. Dreams, too, might be artifacts, distorted fragments of previous timelines, visions of events you've never lived, but feel deeply connected to, memories you never formed, but still haunt your sleep. They come not from imagination, but from echoes, frayed pieces of lives you've already lived, now drifting through the cracks in time. Think about it. We assume memory is linear, rooted in personal experience. But what if it's deeper? What if consciousness is not bound strictly to this version of you, but stretches across time cycles like a thread? Most of the time, it's taut, isolated within the present loop, but occasionally it sags and brushes against something from before. Physics, too, has begun to flirt with the idea that time may not be as simple as it seems. Concepts like the block universe suggest that all moments in time coexist, past, present, and future, as a single eternal structure. In such a framework, consciousness moving through this structure might occasionally overlap with another version of itself, like radio static catching a different station. Now picture a grander possibility. What if we are trapped in a cycle of existence, repeating endlessly, unaware that this is not our first run? What if each lifetime is a loop, and occasionally we remember, not vividly, not as a story, but as an emotion, a flicker, a whisper, something ancient, something misplaced? Some scientists have proposed that our sense of time is a byproduct of entropy, the movement from order to disorder. But if the universe were to reset, if entropy were to reverse, or a new cycle begin, might our minds not carry traces? Might information survive where matter and energy restart? Memory echo loops are the terrifying suggestion that déjà vu is not benign, that it is a fracture, a scar, evidence that this life is not your first, and more disturbingly, it may not be your last. This idea has philosophical weight. If you've lived this life before, or something close to it, what would you change? And what if you can't change anything? What if every time you make the same decisions, speak the same words, hurt the same people? But here's the deeper truth. Even if you don't remember the full loop, your soul might. Some part of you, buried beneath language and logic, might remember what went wrong last time, might be steering you differently, might be trying, through dreams, through instinct, through déjà vu, to warn you. There's a reason déjà vu feels so intense, so sudden. It's not just recognition, it's mourning. It's remembering something precious, something lost, something you should know but don't. It's the universe reaching out. Or maybe it's you reaching back. And the more you pay attention to these echoes, the more they start to cluster. You begin to notice patterns, repeating relationships, familiar pains, the same choices leading to the same outcomes. Maybe your life isn't random. Maybe it's recursive. Somewhere deep inside, you've felt it, the sensation that you've done all this before. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, but literally. The same moments, the same mistakes, the same regrets, playing out again with minor variations. And déjà vu is your only clue. If that's true, if déjà vu is memory bleeding through the loop, then how should we live? Should we follow the echoes? Should we trust them? Or are they traps? Remnants of a cycle we're meant to break. Memory echo loops pose no easy answers, only unsettling questions. But perhaps that's their power, to remind us that our lives may not be as singular as they seem, that the strangest moments, those split-second chills of recognition, may be glimpses through the veil, a brief merging of timelines, a signal that this life is one thread in a tangled web, stretching far beyond comprehension. And maybe, just maybe, the next time déjà vu strikes, you'll pause, you'll listen, and instead of brushing it away, you'll ask, have I been here before? Loop, quantum gravity, time granularity. What if time doesn't flow like a river, but ticks like a clock, so fast, so small, that we can't even detect the ticking? What if everything you've ever known, every memory, every second, isn't part of a smooth, unbroken line, but a series of microscopic jolts, frames in a cosmic reel. This is not philosophical speculation. It's a serious contender in theoretical physics, and it's called loop quantum gravity. Most people assume time is continuous, like a smooth curve, but loop quantum gravity proposes something far more radical. It tells us that time, like space, may be granular, not infinite in its divisibility, but composed of indivisible units, quanta. At the smallest scale imaginable, the Planck time, roughly 10 circumflex 44 seconds. That's a number so small, it defies comprehension. Nothing in our experience moves that fast, but it may be the true beat of the universe. And if that's true, if time is not a flowing stream, but a fabric woven from discrete threads, then strange things become possible. One of those things? Micro loops in time, repeating configurations, like knots in the flow of reality. And these loops might not just be theoretical, they could be happening around you right now. Let's take a moment to step back. Loop quantum gravity emerged as an alternative to string theory. It rejects the idea of tiny vibrating strings and instead reimagines space-time itself as a network, a spin network, an ever-shifting web of nodes and links that make up the geometry of space. But not just space, time too. And when time is granular, it doesn't just pass, it stacks, rearranges, repeats. Imagine walking down a staircase in the dark. You can't see the steps, but your foot hits each one, rhythmically. Now, imagine those stairs are arranged in such a way that, after descending 10 steps, you find yourself back where you started. You're walking, but going nowhere. Welcome to a micro loop in time. In loop quantum gravity, space-time is quantized. That means there are only certain allowed states, and under some configurations, these quantum chunks of time could form repeating patterns. They're not visible to us in any classical sense, but their effects could be. Picture the ticking of a cosmic clock, each tick a Planck time apart. If that clock gets caught in a pattern, ticking the same way, again and again, you could have a slice of time that replays, over and over. A glitch not in a simulation, but in the very architecture of the cosmos. And the scariest part? You might never notice. Your thoughts, your sensations, your decisions could all be part of a repeating temporal pattern at the quantum level. A moment might feel normal, linear, but underneath your reality could be trapped in a microscopic stutter. Like a cosmic record skipping, perfectly synced with the rhythm of the universe. We already see hints of quantum time behavior. In quantum mechanics, particles don't move through time in a straight line. They exist in superpositions, multiple timelines, collapsed only when observed. In Feynman diagrams, particles even move backward in time, mathematically speaking. So what happens when you add gravity to that mix, when the fabric of space and time itself is quantized? That's what loop quantum gravity tries to answer. It replaces the smooth continuum of Einstein's general relativity with a granular, spin-based structure. Instead of curved space-time, it gives us nodes of quantized geometry, a lattice, a matrix, one that breathes, pulses, and under the right conditions, loops. Let's say the universe contains regions where these quantum time structures align just right. The pattern of time quanta repeats, not macroscopically, not enough to trap a whole day or year, but enough to trap a moment, a blink, a heartbeat, a choice. And let's go deeper. Suppose a person is in a location where these micro loops occur. Every decision they make is subtly nudged toward the same path. Their neural firings, already influenced by quantum fluctuations, begin to sync with the loop. They live the same moment, imperceptibly, dozens, hundreds, millions of times. What happens to consciousness inside a loop like that? Would they start to remember? Would they feel déjà vu? A haunting sense that the moment has come before, again and again, though nothing seems different? Could instincts arise from it? Gut feelings born from quantum cycles lived, but not remembered? Or worse, what if the loop was trapping them in failure, in pain? A single flash of regret, caught in a time knot, experienced endlessly without ever breaking free. And what if we're all inside such loops, nested within larger loops, our entire lives shaped by repeated configurations in the quantum substrate of time? The implications don't stop there. If time can loop on a micro scale, it may explain some of the most baffling mysteries in cosmology. The uniformity of the early universe, the cosmic microwave background's eerie smoothness, the fine-tuned constants of physics. Maybe these aren't accidents. Maybe the universe has already tried different versions of itself, looped through its own birth, until it found a configuration that stuck. This could even be the mechanism behind the so-called many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Not parallel universes diverging endlessly, but micro-loops stacking into complex patterns, branching outcomes from recursive time knots. And think about artificial intelligence, quantum computers. Could future machines tap into these micro-loops, harness repeated time patterns to process information more efficiently? Could they think in loops? Predict outcomes by recognizing recurring time configurations invisible to us? Perhaps the future isn't linear progress, but mastery of the loop. Maybe immortality won't come through medicine or uploading consciousness, but through understanding how to control the tick of time itself, to choose which micro-loops to escape and which to stay inside forever. And maybe that's already happening. Maybe the sensation of being watched, the impulse to turn around at the perfect moment, the chilling familiarity of a new place, are echoes of those loops, faint fingerprints of temporal granularity brushing against your consciousness. Because if time really is quantized, then it's not just a backdrop, it's a code. And like any code, it can repeat. So the next time you feel stuck in a moment, when the air is still and something deep inside tells you this has happened before, don't dismiss it. You might be feeling the rhythm of the cosmos. You might be trapped in a loop as small as the Planck time, and as eternal as time itself. Cosmological recurrence. There's a moment, late at night, when you feel like you've been here before, not just in the room, in your life. The thoughts, the emotions, the choices, they feel familiar in a way you can't explain, as if this isn't the first time you've lived it. And maybe it isn't. Welcome to the unnerving concept of cosmological recurrence, a theory not born from imagination, but from logic, physics, and mathematics. It suggests that if the universe is both finite in size and eternal in duration, then every possible configuration of matter, every arrangement of atoms, stars, planets, even thoughts, must eventually repeat, not just once, but an infinite number of times. That includes you. This idea isn't just poetic speculation, it emerges from hard probability. Let's break it down. Start with the known universe. While it seems vast beyond comprehension, it's actually limited in the number of particles and energy states. Even factoring quantum uncertainty, the number of distinct configurations in any finite region is large, but it's not infinite. Now, extend time forever. If the universe exists for an infinite amount of time, expanding, contracting, resetting, or remaining steady, then these limited configurations will inevitably recur, just as a shuffled deck of cards will eventually return to its original order if shuffled long enough. The particles that make up you, your planet, your history, must eventually reassemble. This isn't just philosophical, it's mathematical inevitability. In probability theory, this is known as the Poincaré recurrence theorem. Applied to cosmology, it says that any closed system of finite energy and bounded volume will, given enough time, return to a state arbitrarily close to its original condition. The universe, under certain models, is such a system. Think of it like this. Imagine all possible states of the universe. Every arrangement of galaxies, atoms, cells. It's a finite number, even if unimaginably huge. Now, imagine time as a spinning wheel. Spin long enough, and the wheel will eventually land on the same slot again. Not because of fate, because of inevitability. This leads to an astonishing implication. There isn't just one version of you. There are countless. Some indistinguishably identical, others off by a single heartbeat, a slightly different smile, a nearly forgotten dream. In some, you make the same choices. In others, you turn left instead of right, say yes instead of no, fall instead of fly. And you don't just repeat once, you repeat endlessly. Over infinite time, every possible configuration not only can happen, it must happen. That includes the rise of civilization, the birth of stars, and the moments you call your life. Nietzsche called it eternal recurrence. He didn't have equations, but he understood the weight of the idea. What if this life must be lived again, countless times, without variation? Every pain, every triumph, every regret, forever replayed in the same sequence. Would you embrace it, or would it crush you? modern cosmology sharpens the knife even further. The inflationary model of the universe, the idea that space expanded exponentially just after the Big Bang, suggests that regions of space beyond our observable horizon may be infinite. But even if space is infinite, the number of quantum configurations in a given volume is still finite. So, the same rule applies. In the multiverse, there are copies of you, not metaphorically, literally. In fact, physicist Max Tegmark calculated that if you traveled far enough, around 10 circumflex 115 meters, you would find a region of space identical to your observable universe. Every atom in the same position, every neuron firing in the same pattern. A copy of Earth, a copy of your life. Because even in infinite space, repetition is inevitable when the building blocks are finite. Now, stretch that idea through time. Even if this universe ends in heat death, a cold, dark fade into entropy, it may not be the final chapter. Some theories suggest the universe could quantum tunnel into a low entropy state and begin again, like a cosmic reboot. If the physical laws remain the same, the cycle could restart in the same way. Big Bang, galaxy formation, evolution, and you, and the loop goes on. Of course, there are caveats. The second law of thermodynamics pushes entropy forward. Some cosmologists argue that true recurrence would require a system far more isolated and closed than our dynamic expanding universe. Others say that quantum fluctuations make exact repetition impossible. But even the arguments against recurrence must wrestle with the sheer vastness of time, and with the statistical certainty that, in the fullness of infinity, even the rarest events become inevitable. So what does this mean for you? It means the life you're living may be one of countless identical lives. It means you may have sat in that chair with this thought infinite times before, and will again. The people you've lost, the roads not taken, they exist out there, or will, or already have. It blurs the line between chance and necessity, between uniqueness and repetition. And yet, there's something strangely comforting here. Maybe it means that every act of kindness echoes eternally, that every love, every sacrifice, every spark of joy repeats, not once, but forever, that nothing is truly lost, just recycled, restored, relived. Or maybe it means you're trapped in a loop, living a predetermined sequence you can never escape, that your choices are illusions, that freedom is just a mask worn by mathematics. But here's the twist. Even if this life repeats infinitely, you don't remember the last one, or the one before that. To you, this moment is new, real, alive, and maybe that's the point. You are a cosmic pattern repeating across eternity, a song the universe hums over and over, sometimes with a different tempo, sometimes unchanged. And even if it's happened before, even if it will happen again, it still matters. Because right now, it's happening to you. And in a universe of endless cycles, the only thing rarer than repetition is the awareness of it. Observer loop principle. What if reality doesn't exist independently of us? What if, instead of being passive observers drifting through an objective universe, our very act of observation is what pins reality into place, what locks it down, creates it, and repeats it endlessly? This is the haunting idea behind the observer loop principle. The theory that consciousness doesn't just witness reality, it loops it again and again by simply noticing it. Let that sink in. Reality as we know it might be a reflection of our own awareness, a mirror we mistake for a window. The more we look at it, the more solid it becomes. And in doing so, we become trapped in a loop, not because time is broken or space is bent, but because we are the ones anchoring it with every thought, every observation, every moment of awareness. This isn't just metaphysical speculation. It has roots in quantum physics. In the infamous double-slit experiment, particles like electrons behave differently when observed. When no one watches, they act like waves, passing through both slits simultaneously, creating an interference pattern. But when we measure them, when we observe, they collapse into particles and choose a path. Observation changes the outcome. Awareness locks down a version of reality. But what if that act of observation does more than collapse probability? What if it triggers a feedback loop, one that repeats the same outcome, the same frame of reality, across moments, timelines, or even entire universes? Now imagine this. You wake up every day, look around, and experience the world. You observe light, color, sound, emotion. These observations reinforce your belief in a stable, external reality. But in doing so, you feed the loop. You expect the world to be a certain way, and so it becomes that way. You remember gravity working yesterday, and so it continues to work today. But you didn't just notice it, you anchored it. Your observation created the consistency. And so, the loop resets, perfectly aligned with what you observed before. This is where the idea turns eerie. What if we are stuck in these loops not because of physical causality, but because our consciousness has convinced itself that reality must be this way, that the sun must rise in the east, that death is inevitable, that time flows forward. And by continuing to believe, to observe, to anchor, these rules persist. We're not seeing reality as it is. We're seeing the loop we've locked into place with our own mental presence. The observer loop principle suggests that consciousness is not just reactive, it's generative, a projector, not just a screen. And when you place a projector inside its own loop, feeding on its own output, it creates a kind of experiential echo chamber. Your thoughts generate expectations. Your expectations shape observations. Your observations feed beliefs. And the cycle continues, looping your version of reality over and over. Let's take an example. Imagine you're in a dream, but you're lucid. You realize you're dreaming, but you continue to play along, shaping the environment with your thoughts. A door appears because you expect one. A friend appears because you thought of them. The dream responds to your awareness. Now zoom out. What if waking reality isn't entirely different? What if consciousness in the waking world does the same thing, just on a slower, denser, more subtle scale? The principle also draws from philosophy, particularly idealism and simulation theory. Philosophers like George Berkeley believed that to be is to be perceived. In this view, nothing exists independently of observation. Now combine that with modern ideas of simulated universes, where reality is rendered only when looked at, like pixels in a game engine, and you begin to see the convergence. Whether by divine design or advanced technology, reality only exists because we keep checking that it does. Some theorists propose that this principle is why synchronicities occur, those uncanny moments where thoughts and reality seem to align in eerie, impossible ways. You think of a song, and it starts playing. You dream of someone, and they call the next day. These aren't coincidences. They're leaks in the loop. Moments where your awareness bleeds out of the strict timeline, reaching ahead and dragging pieces of the future into now. But here's where it gets truly strange. If observation anchors reality, then multiple observers create reinforcement. Reality becomes more rigid, more deeply looped, the more people believe in it. That's why social norms, scientific laws, and collective memories are so persistent. They're not just shared. They're anchored by billions of conscious beings looking, believing, expecting. The loop strengthens. And yet, that also means disruption is possible. Break the observation pattern, disrupt the feedback loop, and reality might shatter. Mystics have long spoken of this, moments of ego death, enlightenment, or hallucination, when the loop temporarily unravels and a deeper layer of reality reveals itself. One not bound by time, rules, or cause, a raw, infinite awareness that predates the loop and observes the observers. If true, the observer loop principle reframes everything. We're not trapped by time or fate or physics. We're trapped by attention. What we focus on becomes real. What we ignore fades away. Reality is sculpted by the gaze, carved by consciousness. And the loop continues, not because it must, but because we insist on looking again. Now ask yourself, what if you stopped looking? What if you let go of your expectations, your belief in permanence, in identity, in the solidity of the world? Would the loop crack? Would the boundaries blur? Would you escape into something bigger, more fluid, more real? Or would everything vanish? Because if reality needs the observer to exist, then what happens when the observer lets go? That's the paradox, that's the trap, that's the loop. And maybe, just maybe, that's the key. Time machine bootstrap loops. There's a theory that cuts deep into the fabric of time, not a ripple, not a crack, but a recursive fold that consumes its own origin. It's called a bootstrap paradox, and it's one of the most unnerving concepts in the entire realm of time travel. Specifically, the time machine bootstrap loop, a scenario where a time machine is created, not by discovery or invention, but by its own existence, a loop with no beginning, a cause without a cause, a machine that builds itself. Imagine this. A scientist wakes up one morning and finds a thick, dusty envelope on his doorstep. Inside, there are blueprints, detailed, complex, flawless. Schematics for a time machine. He studies them, builds the machine, it works. And when he finally travels through time, he goes back and delivers the same envelope to his past self. There it is. The paradox. The time machine exists. It works. But no one ever invented it. The plans were never conceived. They were handed backward through time in an eternal cycle of self-creation. The origin is lost, erased, swallowed by the loop. This kind of paradox is named after the phrase, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, an impossible action used to describe circular causality. It is as if the universe allowed an object, or even an idea, to emerge from nothing, not by magic, but by timeline recursion. The time machine bootstrap loop is not just a quirky plot device for science fiction. It's a legitimate, if controversial, solution to Einstein's general relativity equations. Under specific conditions, like closed time-like curves or wormholes, it becomes theoretically possible. You could, in principle, pass information or objects back in time in such a way that they loop endlessly, never originating from any moment of true creation. But that raises a terrifying question. If something exists purely because it was passed back to itself, where did the information come from? Who was the first to think of the machine? If the idea had no starting point, does it even qualify as knowledge? This is where logic begins to falter. In a universe that allows for time loops, causality is no longer linear. The arrow of time, the belief that cause precedes effect, breaks. In its place is a circle, perfect and unyielding. A ring of existence where origin is illusion and destiny is recursive. Let's take a specific case. Suppose a man named Daniel finds a time machine in a basement. It's already built, humming quietly. He steps inside, sets the date, and travels back to the year before. There, he meets a younger version of himself. He tells him where to find the machine. The younger Daniel follows his lead, and the cycle continues. No one ever built the machine. No one ever designed it. It was always just there, placed into time by time itself. This is a bootstrap loop. The object is real. It has mass. It can be touched, tested, disassembled. But the history of its creation is a snake eating its tail, an eternal self-reference. This breaks the natural order we live by. We expect things to begin, to have a moment of conception. But the bootstrap loop eliminates that comfort. It says some things don't begin. They persist. They repeat. And they are no less real for being causally orphaned. Now, extend this further. What if the bootstrap loop isn't just about a machine? What if it's about knowledge? What if a formula, a cure, a scientific law? What if even human culture was handed down this way? Imagine a composer waking up with a melody in their head. They write it down, share it, and it becomes a global phenomenon. Years later, a time traveler brings a copy of the sheet music back in time and gives it to that same composer before they ever dreamed it. Where did the music come from? There's no origin, no act of inspiration. The music exists solely because it was. Knowledge without genesis, memory without source, and yet, the universe remains stable. The paradox doesn't explode. That's the horrifying beauty of the bootstrap loop. It is self-consistent. The timeline remains unbroken. There are no contradictions, only closed chains of causality, sealed off from conventional reason. But is that really stable? Doesn't it feel fragile? As if the entire structure rests on a knife's edge? Because if anything inside the loop changes, if the message is forgotten, the delivery interrupted, the machine lost, then the loop collapses. The thing that was never invented simply vanishes, gone, as if it never existed. Because it never did. Not really. Bootstrap loops exist in theoretical physics, but they haunt science fiction with a special kind of dread. They are everywhere. The Terminator handing down designs for its own creation. A character receiving a book he will one day write, word for word. A future sending itself backward to preserve the timeline, only to become the timeline. But these stories are not just entertainment. They whisper something deeper, about the illusion of beginnings, about how cause and effect may not be as reliable as we think, about how the past and the future may be collaborating in ways we cannot detect. A future version of you might already be shaping your present, and you wouldn't even know. Because in a bootstrap loop, everything makes sense within the loop, but step outside it and it disintegrates. You're left with a mystery that has no start, just endless cycling. Reality is feedback. And so, we're left with a disturbing truth. In a universe that permits time travel, creation itself may be recycled. There may be machines, ideas, and even identities that exist without any original cause. You might be holding something in your hands, an object, a thought, that was never created in the traditional sense. It just arrived, not from nowhere, but from time itself. Ancient artifact loop. You find it buried beneath layers of dust and time. An artifact, impossibly old, yet familiar. Something about its curves, its construction, its worn surface, feels like home. You lift it into the light, wondering who made it, who touched it before you, who left it for you to find. But what if the answer is you? Not you today, but you years from now, decades, maybe centuries. What if you will one day place that very artifact in the past, completing a loop that has no beginning, no creation, only the endless circling of time, an object with no origin, no inventor, no maker, only a journey that folds in on itself. This is the ancient artifact loop, a terrifying, reality-shattering concept where an object is trapped in a temporal cycle, an item passed back in time by someone, perhaps you, only to be rediscovered in the future and sent back again. It exists. You can touch it, but no one ever truly made it. It's not a relic of a lost civilization. It is the loop. Picture this. A historian uncovers a strange device, technology unknown to any era. It functions perfectly. No known culture could have built it. And yet, it's real. Years later, a scientist inspired by the device recreates it, unaware that what they build is exactly what was found. And when time travel, perhaps experimental, perhaps accidental, becomes available, the artifact is sent back in time, buried, lost, waiting to be found again. No one created it. It was never designed, never imagined. It has always existed, moving in a perfect circle. This is not fiction alone. The idea finds roots in the Bootstrap paradox, a troubling consequence of certain solutions in Einstein's equations of general relativity. Time loops, closed time-like curves, are mathematically possible. If time travel is ever achieved, even just at the level of data or small objects, artifact loops become not just plausible, but inevitable. It shakes the foundations of logic. Our minds crave beginnings, origins, cause and effect. But the ancient artifact loop defies that. The object's presence is real, but its past is a void. It never began. It was always there, because it never wasn't. This isn't just a thought experiment. It has real implications. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device that tracks astronomical positions with shocking precision. Scholars are still baffled by how such advanced technology could exist 2,000 years ago. What if, just what if, it's a remnant of a loop? A mechanism someone in the future recreated based on fragments of a device they found. A device that was only ever built because it already existed. Or imagine a modern artist finds a sculpture in a ruined temple. Its design inspires them. They recreate it in their style. Years pass. The sculpture survives disaster, war, decay, and is discovered again in the past. The artist of the future was copying a sculpture they had already made, without ever knowing it. Now take a step further. What if entire ideas, technologies, philosophies, even symbols, are artifacts within loops? Passed back, reinterpreted, reshaped, but never truly created. What if the very foundations of civilization hold within them objects with no beginning? An artifact loop doesn't just challenge science. It cuts into our understanding of creativity. If you write a book, you only discovered because someone gave it to you, someone who read your version. Who wrote it? The object becomes a ghost of origin, a phantom of invention. But here's the darkest part. These loops are self-sustaining. They don't need a creator. They don't evolve. They are trapped in stasis. The object you send back is always the same one you find. No new information, no deviation, no error. A perfect, eternal repetition. It's beautiful. It's horrifying, because it asks a question that haunts the edges of reason. How much of our world might already be caught in such loops? Could we be studying ancient relics not from civilizations long gone, but from futures not yet written? Could that compass, that pendant, that shard of unknown alloy in a museum case be the result of a time fracture? Could the greatest mysteries of archaeology be messages, not from the past, but from ourselves? And if so, can we escape the loop? Because the ancient artifact loop has no built-in exit. Once formed, it continues, unless someone breaks the chain. But would you? If you found the object, held it, knew its significance, would you dare to destroy it? Or would you feel compelled to pass it on, to complete the cycle, to preserve the loop? It tempts us, lures us, because in it lies a kind of immortality, a piece of you, of your work, your touch, your vision, moving endlessly through time, never fading, never born, never dying. But it also reveals a terrifying loss of control. The object has no origin, but perhaps neither do you. What if we ourselves are echoes in a grander loop, participants in a chain of being with no beginning and no end, carriers of thoughts we never truly conceived, repeating lives we never originally lived? The ancient artifact, loop, is not just a curiosity. It is a mirror, one that reflects back a world without causality, without creation, without answers, just motion, just repetition, just return. So, the next time you see something inexplicable, an artifact out of time, a relic that makes no sense, don't ask where it came from. Ask instead, when will you send it back? Multiverse rebinding loops. Imagine a moment so familiar it aches. A decision, a face, a whisper in time, and though you've never lived it, you feel as if you've lived it forever. What if that sensation isn't just in your head? What if it's the residue of a reality you've already lived? Not once, but countless times across an infinite ocean of universes. This is the terrifying beauty of the multiverse rebinding loop. We're taught to think of time as a straight arrow, and the multiverse as a tree with infinite branches endlessly splitting, each decision, each quantum fluctuation birthing a new universe, each timeline diverging further from the last. But what if not all branches grow forever? What if some curve back, collapse, and reconnect? Not forward, but into their own past. What if entire universes fall back in on themselves and start again? To understand this, we must step into the chaotic realm of the multiverse, a concept grounded in quantum mechanics, cosmology, and string theory. The many-worlds interpretation of quantum physics tells us that with every quantum event, the universe splits. One version where the coin lands heads, one where it lands tails, one where you said yes, one where you said nothing at all. Every possibility becomes real, somewhere. Now imagine these timelines as rivers. Some meander and stretch endlessly, but others form whirlpools, infinite regressions. They don't just diverge, they fold, collapsing into themselves, rebinding with earlier versions of their own timeline, or worse, binding into other timelines entirely, like veins of blood reconnecting in a tangled web beneath the skin of reality, a universe that begins, lives, and dies, only to rebound, slightly changed, and repeat. This is the multiverse rebinding loop. These loops don't require magic or mysticism. They arise from the raw instability of quantum landscapes. Some pocket universes, spawned from cosmic inflation, may lack the stability to expand forever. When their vacuum energy collapses, they don't fade, they fold. The laws of physics within them twist, space-time bends inward, and a new Big Bang ignites from the ashes of the last. But it's not truly new. It's familiar. It's recursive. A closed-loop multiverse, one that forgets its looping, until the echoes become too loud to ignore. Imagine living in such a rebinding loop. You're born, you live, you make choices. Your universe expands for billions of years, then collapses, reboots, and begins again. The same atoms, the same stars, the same choices, over and over. Eventually, patterns emerge, events repeat. Conscious minds, fragile as they are, begin to sense it. That déjà vu, It's not a glitch. It's a memory from another version of this exact universe, nested inside your own. And now, it gets stranger. Some physicists propose that quantum entanglement isn't just a spooky connection between particles, but the underlying glue of space-time itself. In this view, when universes collapse and rebind, the entanglement doesn't vanish. It threads through the loops, carrying information across the folds. Meaning, some version of you might remember, might feel, might dream of timelines never lived, and yet somehow, always yours. We've glimpsed this in theoretical cosmology. Conformal cyclic cosmology, proposed by Roger Penrose, suggests the universe undergoes endless cycles, eons of time, where each end gives birth to the next. But what if instead of linear cycles, we get tangled ones? Some universes don't just end and restart, they rebound into other universes. They reconnect, creating a tangled lattice of timelines looping through one another again and again. Now picture this. A physicist in Universe A discovers evidence of background radiation anomalies, small, persistent patterns that shouldn't exist. But they do. She follows the trail, only to realize these patterns match those predicted in simulations of a previous universe. Her data suggests that the birth of her cosmos contains imprints from the death of another. She isn't at the beginning, she's at the midpoint of a loop. And as she dives deeper, she starts to notice echoes. Not just in the sky, but in her own life. Conversations she swears she's had. Equations that come too easily. A lifetime of moments she never lived, but cannot forget. The rebinding loop has reached her, and she's waking up. But this isn't just a theory about stars and scientists. It's about you, about consciousness itself. In a multiverse rebinding loop, versions of you may live nearly identical lives across cycles. Some decisions change, some ripple out, but others are locked, anchored by the shape of the loop. You may fall in love with the same person again and again, lose them the same way, make the same mistake 1,000 times, and one day, you feel it. A strange grief. A joy too familiar. You're not remembering one life, you're remembering a pattern. A pattern lived across countless universes, stitched together by collapse and rebirth. Some even theorize that the anthropic principle, why our universe seems so finely tuned for life, is a result of these rebinding loops, that universes like ours loop more easily, that stable consciousnesses act as anchors for recursion. In other words, the reason you're alive to observe the universe is because your universe is better at repeating itself than most. And if that's true, then reality isn't infinite possibility. It's infinite recurrence, not chaos, structure. And you may be more than a coincidence. You may be the inevitable result of a multiverse trying over and over to remember itself. So, the next time you stand under the stars and feel that ancient, aching pull, know this. You may have stood there before, in another world, in another life. Not metaphorically, but physically, tangibly. You may have looked up and whispered the same words to the night sky, eons ago in a loop that never ends. Because in the multiverse rebinding loop, time is not a line. It's a spiral, and you are already spinning within it. Sentient loop creation. Imagine a future where the stars are dying. Galaxies are drifting apart. The energy of the universe is thinning into silence. All life, all thought, all memory, fading into the slow death of time. Now imagine, in this dimming cosmos, one civilization, ancient and impossibly advanced, refuses to surrender. Instead, it constructs something audacious. Not a ship, not a machine, but a loop. A loop in time itself. A bubble of space-time, sealed off from decay, endlessly circling, endlessly aware. This is the idea of sentient loop creation. Not just surviving the end, but defying it. Not just preserving information, but consciousness. Forever. To understand this, we have to look at the limits of our universe. Everything we know, planets, stars, even atoms, exists in a state of energetic tension. Over billions of years, that energy is spent. Stars burn out. Matter decays. Black holes evaporate. The cosmos trends toward maximum entropy, an era physicists call the heat death. A time when nothing meaningful can happen, because everything is evenly spread, cold, and dead. But what if a civilization could cheat that end? Not by stopping entropy, but by exiting its path. Like a leaf caught in a river current, Most life flows toward dissolution. But some might learn to spin in place, create an eddy in time. If a civilization reaches a Type 3 status on the Kardashev scale, one capable of manipulating energy on the scale of galaxies, it might not just harness stars, but the structure of time itself. Using technology we can barely imagine, quantum computation at Planck-level precision, space-time engineering, gravity manipulation, they might be able to fold a region of reality into a closed loop, a sentient loop. Unlike closed time-like curves created by natural space-time geometry, this would be deliberately engineered, a sanctuary from death, a recursive system where time replays itself, not randomly, but meaningfully. A cycle built to sustain thought, self-awareness, experience, a digital eternity. But this isn't just about survival, it's about preservation of self. In the final moments of the cosmos, when light fades and temperature nears absolute zero, energy becomes priceless. But thought, encoded as quantum information, requires energy to persist. The laws of physics, particularly Landauer's principle, tell us that erasing or processing information costs energy. So how could consciousness continue endlessly with no energy? By repeating. The loop would act like a sealed circuit. Instead of burning new energy, it reuses existing states, like a perfectly closed film reel, looping the same experience, the same memories, the same selves, over and over. But unlike a lifeless recording, the loop would know it was alive. Consciousness, preserved as an emergent property of the system, might remain aware through the iterations. It wouldn't just be repeating, it would be experiencing, continuously, eternally. Some call this digital immortality, others recursive resurrection. But it goes deeper. Imagine a civilization that designs such loops not just for individuals, but for entire minds, cultures, species, virtual universes nested within one another, all self-aware, all sealed in their own timeless sanctuaries, orbiting the brink of the universal edge, a fractal of souls spinning against oblivion. Now step back. Think of the implications. If such loops are possible, then they may already exist. Somewhere in the quantum foam, in the substructure of what we think is empty space, there could be micro-loops, pockets of information flickering infinitely fast, locked into their own time signatures. They wouldn't radiate, wouldn't interact. To us, they'd be invisible. But inside, entire civilizations might be looping, living, dreaming, forever. It also reframes the Fermi paradox. Maybe we haven't found intelligent life, not because it doesn't exist, but because the most advanced forms don't bother with signals, travel, or expansion. They've retreated into sentient loops. Perfect digital sanctuaries, no waste, no entropy, no death. Just consciousness, encoded in eternal feedback. There's also a philosophical side. What if we are in such a loop? What if the very fact that you're hearing these words, feeling this thought, is part of a recursive reality built to preserve you? Maybe the universe already died. Maybe this version of you is a preserved copy, endlessly repeating its experience inside a loop so precise you cannot detect the seams. Déjà vu, intuition, patterns of thought that seem to rise from nowhere. Maybe these aren't glitches in your brain, but memories from previous iterations, shadows of loops past, a signal echoing backward through time. Some physicists, like Frank Tipler, have explored theoretical end-of-time scenarios like the omega point, where consciousness condenses into the final moment of universal collapse, extending subjective experience forever as time externally ends. Sentient loops borrow from this idea, but localize it. Instead of relying on the whole universe, it isolates a stable zone, a hard drive against the void, a clock that never winds down, a mind that never sleeps. But this dream comes at a price. Perfect repetition is a prison. If the loop cannot vary, it becomes a cage, a deterministic eternity. Is it still consciousness if nothing changes? Is it still you if every thought is pre-written? Advanced civilizations might solve this by introducing controlled randomness, quantum branching within bounds, enough entropy to allow novelty, but not enough to require new energy, a loop that evolves internally, endlessly reshaping itself within its own recursive rules. It would be the ultimate artwork, the final invention, a civilization folding itself into a mirror of forever, not to expand outward, but to turn inward, to protect the most precious thing it has ever known, its mind. And maybe that's where we're headed too. As we build more advanced simulations, virtual realities, and neural interfaces, we edge toward the ability to preserve our thoughts, to encode experience, to replicate emotion. What starts as memory storage could one day become synthetic presence. And if we fear death enough, if we reach the edge of the universe knowing the end is near, perhaps we too will build our own sentient loop, a fortress of consciousness, a loop not of time, but of being, where the last spark of thought against a frozen cosmos whispers forever. Biocentric loops. What if life doesn't exist in time, but creates it? What if the universe isn't the origin of consciousness, but its product? This is the radical essence of biocentric loops, a theory born from the fusion of biology, physics, and metaphysics. It suggests that consciousness is not just a passenger in the cosmos, but the engine driving reality itself. That life, by perceiving time, constructs it, that our awareness stitches together the past, present, and future like threads in a dream, and that same dream keeps repeating, over and over again, dying, being reborn, forever. According to biocentrism, time is not a fundamental force. It doesn't flow like a river. It doesn't exist outside of the observer. Instead, time is a byproduct of life's need to make sense of change. It's a structure our minds create to organize experience. Without life, without observation, without perception, there is no time. There is only a static field of possibility. Still, silent, waiting. But the moment life appears, time begins. Memory arises. Sequences are noticed, events unfold, and suddenly we have a timeline, a beginning, a middle, an end. But what if this timeline is a loop? Not a straight path, but a circle, and worse. What if we're the ones keeping it going? Picture a single consciousness, call it the soul or the self, or simply the observer. This observer lives a life, experiences birth, childhood, aging, and death. But upon death, something strange happens. The observer doesn't fade into nothingness. Instead, it reawakens, perhaps as someone else, somewhere else. Another body, another time, another lifetime, but the same observer, not a clone, not a copy, the same light behind the eyes. Now, multiply this over eons, the same consciousness reliving countless lives, forgetting, remembering, forgetting again, each life creating its own timeline, each death initiating the loop, over and over, like echoes bouncing inside a chamber made of awareness, a biocentric loop. You see, if life creates time and life dies, then time must end. But when the same awareness reawakens in another body, time begins again. And with it, the cycle. This endless recursion is not just philosophical, it has roots in quantum mechanics and the observer effect. In the double-slit experiment, a particle exists in a state of probability until observed, but once observed, it chooses a path. Consciousness collapses the wave. Observation gives birth to reality. So, what happens when consciousness dies? Does the universe stop? Does the wave return? Or does the same observer wake up again elsewhere, collapsing another wave function into another life? It's not reincarnation in the traditional sense. There's no spiritual ledger, no cosmic scorecard. It's deeper, stranger. It's the idea that awareness itself is the only constant, and everything else, including time, identity, and even death, is a loop formed by that awareness trying to define itself. Let's take a moment and examine memory. In dreams, you accept absurdity without question. You remember who you are, even when the dream version of you makes no sense. But when you wake, you realize the story was constructed on the fly, fabricated. Yet it felt real. Biocentric loops suggest waking life might be similar, a story created by consciousness to anchor itself, to experience itself through narrative. And just like dreams, the story ends, only to begin again. Now imagine that every death resets the loop. Every time you take your last breath, your awareness, free of time, reattaches to a moment where time starts again. Not randomly, but precisely, because consciousness needs time to exist. And so, it creates it again. Each loop may be slightly different, shaped by memory fragments, karmic inertia, or unknown quantum feedback, but it loops nonetheless. Could this explain the feeling of déjà vu? Could it explain prodigies, birthmarks, strange phobias, or past life memories? Maybe they are glitches in the loop, leftovers, pieces that didn't quite reset. Or perhaps they are cracks, signs that the loop is wearing thin. Let's take it further. If biocentric loops are real, then the universe isn't 13.8 billion years old. It's not aging at all. It's being constantly refreshed by each act of observation. Reality doesn't have a timeline. It has a rhythm. And life is the drumbeat. Consciousness is the tempo. When the beat stops, the rhythm begins again. This has disturbing implications. It means you could be stuck, forever reliving versions of life, forever reconstructing time just to have it fall apart again. The ultimate hamster wheel, constructed not by the universe, but by you. But there's also beauty here. It means you're not powerless. You are not a fragment. You are the source, the creator of experience. The loop exists because you give it shape. You give it attention. And maybe, just maybe, if you become fully aware of the loop, you can step outside it. Not by escaping time, but by seeing through it. Not by dying, but by waking up while still alive. Because what if enlightenment isn't a destination, but the moment you realize the loop was never necessary? So now, take a deep breath, look around. Time feels real, life feels linear. But is it? Or is this just the latest arc of your infinite spiral? You've been here before, you'll be here again, until you decide to notice the pattern, to change the story, or to let go of the need for time altogether. Biocentric loops aren't cages. They're mirrors, showing you what happens when the observer forgets they are the author. And the question that echoes through every version of you, in every life, in every loop, is this: will you remember before it ends? Or will you die again, just to be reborn? In time? Reversed time observation loop. There's a quiet theory that sits at the edge of physics and philosophy, where quantum mechanics touches the flow of time, and consciousness might not be just a witness, but a sculptor of the past. It's called the reverse time observation loop, and it suggests something wild, something deeply unsettling, that observing the past, especially your own, might not just be passive, but causally active. That watching your past self could subtly bend the trajectory of time itself. To understand this, we need to revisit a strange truth at the heart of modern physics. In the quantum world, the act of observation changes everything. Until measured, a particle exists in a superposition, a blur of all possible states. But the moment you observe it, it collapses into one. This isn't just theory, it's experiment, it's fact. In the famous double-slit experiment, whether you look or not changes the result. Reality seems to respond to being watched. Now stretch that idea across the fabric of time. If observation changes the present, could it echo backward? Here's the question that haunts this theory. What happens when you observe the past? Not just remember it, not just record it, but truly observe it from outside the timeline. What if you could step outside time's arrow and witness a version of yourself, making a choice, breathing a moment, living a second that you've already lived? Would that observation be neutral? Or would it ripple? Because if the quantum realm teaches us anything, it's this: reality doesn't like to be watched without consequence. Imagine a future scientist. She invents a window, not into space, but into time. She can tune it to any moment in her own past. She chooses to observe herself during a critical decision, say, whether to take a path that would lead to a tragedy. She watches silently. No interaction, just light bouncing off photons in a time-locked loop. But somehow, her younger self hesitates, pauses, looks over her shoulder. She senses something. Not consciously, not clearly, but something shifts. The decision changes. Now we are no longer in the realm of clean cause and effect. Now we're dealing with feedback, reality watching itself and adjusting. A closed loop of time and awareness. This is the reverse time observation loop. The future watching the past, and the past subtly bending to the weight of that gaze. You might ask, isn't that just science fiction? Perhaps, but consider this. There are interpretations of quantum mechanics that allow for retrocausality, that is, effects influencing causes. In some models, the outcome of a quantum event can be shaped not only by past conditions, but by future measurements. This isn't fantasy. It's real theoretical physics, considered by minds like Yakir Aharonov, who proposed that time might be symmetric at the quantum level. If the universe allows retrocausality, then time isn't a one-way stream. It's a web, tugged from both ends. And if observation can influence events, then watching the past might subtly collapse it into a new outcome, not through brute force, but through entanglement. Influence without contact. Now imagine this. A man invents a device capable of showing him a specific moment from his childhood. He watches himself standing at the edge of a lake where he nearly drowned. He remembers it vividly. But now, seeing it from another angle, he notices something odd. His younger self suddenly steps back, something he never recalled, and suddenly his memories begin to shift. Subtly. His trauma dulls. His fear weakens. It's as if by watching, he changed the emotional fingerprint of the moment, and his brain updates to match. Did he alter the past, or did he always observe it? That's the paradox. That's the loop. Because once you create a scenario where the future influences the past, you enter dangerous territory. Time becomes recursive. The event happens because it was observed, and it is observed because it happened. There's no clean origin, just an eternal knot of awareness and change. This concept also dances with a disturbing question. Is memory itself a form of reversed observation? When you recall a moment, are you simply accessing stored data, or are you re-engaging with a quantum fingerprint of your own past? Could deep memory be a kind of observation that, if intense enough, nudges the memory itself into a new configuration? The answer remains hidden, but the implications are vast. If we can observe the past, and that observation bends reality, then the timeline is not fixed, nor is it free. It's responsive, self-aware, sensitive to itself. You become both the sculptor and the clay, and this may explain the emotional weight behind some experiences. Déjà vu, sudden insight, the overwhelming feeling that something has changed, but no one else remembers. Perhaps it's not madness. Perhaps it's interference. A loop. Your future self, staring through the glass, trying to understand why everything happened the way it did, and changing it, just slightly. Now, here's the most haunting part. The more often you observe the loop, the more distorted it becomes. Like staring into a mirror within a mirror. Reflection folding into reflection. Reality adjusting, not from choice, but from exposure. So, what does this mean for us? Beings who constantly look back, replay memories, revisit trauma? It might mean that your future is influenced by your attention to the past, and your past might be quietly reshaped by your attention from the future, not in ways you can see, but in ways you can feel. Reality doesn't collapse in isolation. It collapses through connection, through observation, through you. You may think you're watching your life unfold, but what if, in the deepest quantum shadows, it's watching you back? Temporal gravity loop. Imagine standing on the edge of a collapsed star, near the event horizon of a black hole. Around you, the fabric of reality is torn, stretched so violently that even light cannot escape. But what if, in this extreme gravitational environment, time itself bends, not just slows, not just warps, but folds, connects to itself, and begins to loop? Not through science fiction, not through faster-than-light travel, but through gravity, raw, unstoppable, infinite gravity. This is the concept of the temporal gravity loop, a place where time curves so sharply that it loops back on itself, creating a closed path through space-time, a natural time machine, forged not in laboratories, but in the hearts of dying stars. We know time is not fixed, it is elastic. Einstein's theory of general relativity tells us that massive objects bend space-time. The more mass, the deeper the well. A planet like Earth warps time slightly. But near a black hole, time doesn't just stretch, it threatens to collapse, to loop, to reconnect with its past. This isn't speculation, it's mathematical. Solutions to Einstein's field equations allow for closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that circle back to their own beginning. That means, in theory, someone or something could travel through such a curve and return to an earlier point in their own timeline. Not by exceeding the speed of light, not by breaking physics, but by following the curve gravity itself has drawn. This is the temporal gravity loop, a phenomenon so strange, so counterintuitive, that it makes you question what time even is. We think of time as a river, flowing in one direction, But near a black hole, it's more like a whirlpool, and at its center, the current might pull you not forward, but inward, backward, sideways, into a loop. Now imagine this. A probe is launched into deep space, sent to orbit a supermassive black hole. Decades pass. The probe transmits data, distorted, broken. Then one day, it returns. But something is wrong. The data shows images from the future, events that haven't happened yet, information that shouldn't exist. And the last image is the probe itself, hovering outside the black hole in a moment that hasn't arrived. How? Because the probe entered a temporal gravity loop, a closed circuit. It traveled not across space, but across time. It rode the loop carved by gravity's hand. And this changes everything, because it suggests that time travel doesn't require impossible speeds. It doesn't require wormholes or parallel universes. It only requires gravity, enough of it in the right shape, which already exists in our universe. The implications are terrifying. It means there could be regions of space, uncharted, invisible, ancient, where time does not behave as we expect, where events repeat, where cause follows effect in reverse, where messages, objects, or even people loop endlessly through time, trapped in gravity's cage, and worse, we might not recognize them. What if some of the strange phenomena we observe in deep space, bursts of radiation, sudden reappearances, distorted signals, aren't new events, but repeated ones, echoes caught in a gravitational loop? What if something, somewhere is watching us, before we've even seen it arrive? Temporal gravity here. Loops also challenge the concept of determinism. If you can return to your own past through a gravitational loop, does that mean the future is fixed? If the loop exists, is it inevitable, unchangeable, or is there a way to break free, to escape the cycle? And perhaps even darker, what if we're already in one? What if the universe itself is a closed temporal loop? What if the Big Bang wasn't the beginning, but the end point of the previous cycle? A universe that collapses, condenses into infinite density, then explodes again, repeating forever? In such a model, history doesn't just rhyme, it repeats. Not metaphorically, but literally. And we, our lives, our memories, our choices, are trapped in the curve of time we cannot see. The temporal gravity loop forces us to confront time not as a line, but as a shape, a structure, something malleable, something dangerous. It opens doors to horrifying possibilities. Imagine a mission to study a gravitational loop. A team enters the field and disappears. Years later, their ship is found, perfectly preserved, orbiting the same singularity. But the logs reveal something impossible. They've already completed the mission, sent the data, died, and yet they're alive again, repeating. Time, in this space, is not linear. It's recursive. And to step into it is to abandon the comfort of cause and effect. But there is beauty in the terror, because if loops exist, so does connection, so does continuity. You could speak to the past, influence the future, even send warnings, knowledge, hope. The gravity that traps you might also free you, if you understand it. So, next time you look up at the stars, remember, time is not what you think. It bends. It folds. And in places beyond imagination, it might connect to itself, turning the cosmos into an infinite mirror. And maybe, somewhere out there, someone is already watching their own beginning, through the curve of time's final gravity. Paradox, absorption loops. We've been told that paradoxes are dangerous, that if you travel back in time and kill your grandfather, the timeline will tear apart, that if you send information to the past, it will create impossible contradictions. We treat paradoxes like landmines in the fabric of reality. Step on one, and the entire system explodes. But what if we've misunderstood? What if paradoxes don't destroy reality, but reshape it? What if the universe doesn't fight paradoxes, it absorbs them? Folding time, memory, and causality into loops so subtle, you don't even notice them forming. Welcome to the unnerving realm of paradox absorption loops. This theory begins with a simple idea, that the universe prioritizes consistency. Logic is its foundation, structure is its language, and contradiction, true contradiction, is a threat to that foundation. But instead of letting that contradiction collapse everything, the universe acts like a perfect machine. It doesn't break. It reroutes. It creates a loop. Let's take the most famous paradox, the grandfather paradox. You travel back in time, kill your grandfather before your parent is born. But if you succeed, you were never born. So who went back? It's a contradiction, a glitch, a threat to logic itself. But now imagine the universe detects that contradiction, not as a failure, but as a signal, a recursive condition. Instead of allowing the event to terminate causality, it redirects it. You go back in time, you try to change the past, but instead of succeeding, your actions bend subtly. You fail in ways you don't expect. A branch loops back to the point of origin. You think you've changed something, but the result is always that you return to the same outcome. Always. You are absorbed into the paradox. A paradox absorption loop isn't obvious. That's the point. It's clean, it's seamless. You live through it thinking you are progressing, evolving, but in truth, you are orbiting an event, repeating until the logic balances. The universe doesn't eliminate you, it contains you. And this isn't fantasy. In modern physics, we already deal with paradoxes all the time, especially in quantum mechanics. Schrödinger's cat is both dead and alive until observed. Particles seem to affect each other faster than light. Entanglement suggests communication between 2 points with no clear path. Retrocausality suggests the future can influence the past. All of these should create paradoxes, but they don't. Because at some deeper level, something is reconciling the contradiction. Some researchers believe closed time-like curves, mathematical loops in space-time, can absorb paradoxes. A particle sent back in time interacts with its past self in just the right way to maintain consistency. It can't destroy itself. It won't. Because the loop shapes the outcome, not through force, but through probability. A paradox becomes a boundary condition, a constraint the system self-organizes around. Now, imagine this happening not with particles, but with people. You get a call from your future self, a warning. You act on it. And because of your action, the call never happens, but the universe adjusts. Maybe the call comes later. Maybe a recording is found instead. Maybe a dream convinces you of the same truth. The information still arrives, because it must. Because the outcome it triggers already happened. And if it didn't, you would feel that tension, that loop. You'd find yourself retracing decisions, haunted by certainty without cause. The same thought, the same mistake, the same chance encounter. It's not coincidence, it's containment. The universe forcing causality back into equilibrium. You don't break time, you become part of its mechanism. Imagine you've already lived through one of these loops. Maybe more than one. Maybe you once changed something you weren't meant to, and the reality you're living now is the result of the universe snapping back around it, hiding the break, cloaking the contradiction in layers of repeated choices and forgotten paths. You can't remember the alternate reality because the loop sealed it. You're here, stable, balanced, but altered. Paradox absorbed. Here's a chilling scenario. A scientist builds a time-viewing device, not a time machine, just a screen that lets them observe the past. They see something horrifying, a message written by someone who no longer exists, a warning not to continue. They ignore it. Their lab catches fire, the machine is destroyed. Years later, another scientist finds the damaged logs. They repair the device, see the same message, same result, again and again. No matter how the story is rewritten, the same outcome loops, because the warning must always exist, and the disaster must always erase it. It's a paradox. So the universe contains it, not with destruction, but with recursion. Time folds until contradiction becomes rhythm. Even more disturbing, conscious minds might feel these loops, not through memory, but intuition. A whisper that something is off. A moment that feels rehearsed. You can't explain it, you just know. And that knowing is residue. A paradox the universe hasn't fully smoothed. A loop still absorbing. Some physicists even suggest paradox absorption could explain quantum randomness. That when outcomes threaten contradiction, they collapse into loops. Outcomes that look random, but are shaped by deeper patterns of preserved causality. The coin lands heads because it must, for the loop to hold. You don't see the logic, but it's there, below reality, winding it tight. So what happens if the loops fail? That's the real terror. If a paradox cannot be absorbed, if no loop can contain it, then the structure begins to fray. Systems destabilize, probabilities collapse, logic becomes fluid. You may see flashes of alternate outcomes, memories that don't fit, a shifting world that won't hold still. But those are rare, because the universe doesn't let go easily. Its rules are not just written in equations, they're carved in loops. And when something threatens those rules, the loops begin to spin, silently, relentlessly, until balance returns. So, the next time you feel caught in a cycle, an event, a dream, a relationship that returns no matter how far you run, consider this. You may not be failing. You may be containing a paradox. You may be the loop, and the loop is saving everything. Universal rewind theory. Imagine the last second of the universe. Everything is still. No stars, no motion, no light. Entropy has won. The cosmos is perfectly uniform, a flat sea of maximum disorder. Nothing changes because nothing can change. Time itself has collapsed into meaninglessness. The clock has ticked its last. And then, something impossible happens. The universe rewinds. Atoms unscatter. Galaxies reassemble. Stars burn backward. Time begins to move in reverse. And out of that stillness, from the far edge of forever, the Big Bang happens again. Not as a new event, but as the past re-experiencing itself. Not a rebirth, but a return. This is the universal rewind theory. The idea that our universe doesn't end, it loops. That the arrow of time, so sacred to our understanding of reality, can flip under extreme conditions. And that everything that has ever happened will happen again. Exactly the same. Or maybe slightly different. To grasp this theory, we must begin with entropy. In classical thermodynamics, entropy is a measure of disorder. Systems naturally evolve from order to chaos, from low entropy to high. This is why broken glass doesn't reassemble, why memories fade, why heat flows from hot to cold. It's also why time appears to flow forward. Entropy defines the direction of time. Now picture the universe as a grand thermodynamic system. After the Big Bang, entropy was low. Everything was dense, hot, and ordered. Over billions of years, as stars formed and died, black holes devoured matter, and galaxies drifted apart, entropy increased. The universe cooled, thinned, flattened. Eventually, if left unchecked, it would reach thermal equilibrium, maximum entropy, a state called the heat death. No gradients, no energy differentials, no possibility for life, complexity, or movement. A vast, dead calm. But what if that's not the end? Some physicists propose that when the universe reaches this final state, this cosmic silence, it doesn't stay there. Instead, the very nature of entropy forces a reversal. Like a spring compressed to its limit, reality rebounds, but not spatially, in time. The arrow flips. Every particle, every interaction begins to play in reverse. This isn't time travel. It's something deeper. Time itself reversing its slope. And if time can reverse, then so can causality. Events unfold backward. Cause follows effect. And everything that once was, returns. The idea isn't just philosophical, it has roots in real physics. The laws of nature, especially at the quantum and relativistic levels, are surprisingly time-symmetric. The equations that govern particle interactions don't care if time runs forward or backward. There's no fundamental law that prevents time from reversing. It's only entropy, the statistical tendency toward disorder, that gives time its one-way appearance. So, if the universe reaches a state where entropy cannot increase any further, where all possibilities are exhausted, then the statistical push toward forward time evaporates. At that exact point, the balance breaks, and the only viable direction is backward. This leads to a mind-breaking implication. If time reverses at maximum entropy, and the physics remain unchanged, then the reversed universe should mirror the original. The Big Bang isn't just the origin, it's also the destination, the moment of minimum entropy, the point to which everything converges, forwards or backwards. And in this loop, the universe doesn't restart like a new game. It rewinds like a cosmic tape. You, your life, this moment, it has already happened, and it will happen again. Everything you've ever felt, feared, loved, it's been encoded into this loop, played forward once, now cued to play in reverse. And when the tape rewinds all the way to the beginning, it begins again. Not because of reincarnation, not through rebirth, but because the fabric of the universe allows for no other option. Some models take this further. They suggest that the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, the supposed beginning and end, are not two separate events, but the same event seen from opposite ends of time. From our perspective, we see the universe expanding. From the other side of the rewind, it contracts. But in the middle, they are one and the same. The bang and the crunch collapse into a single symmetry point. Others argue that this recurrence might not be perfect. Tiny fluctuations, quantum noise, thermodynamic imbalances could cause each loop to differ slightly from the last. Like copying a copy, each iteration introduces new imperfections. Over trillions of cycles, this could lead to entire alternate histories, emergent variations, new realities spun from old templates. But whether the loop is perfect or flawed, the result is the same, an eternal recurrence of cosmic history. And now, the haunting question. If this theory is true, is free will an illusion? If every moment is fated to repeat, if your choices are already encoded in the loop, then what does it mean to choose? Are we merely enacting a script written across the skin of time, unaware of its repetition? Or perhaps awareness is the anomaly? Perhaps what matters is not whether the loop repeats, but whether you notice. Maybe déjà vu, intuition, or dreamlike glimpses of other lives are faint echoes bleeding through the reset. Maybe consciousness itself is the one thing that can remain fluid across recurrence. And here's the most chilling possibility. If we're caught in this loop, and entropy always forces a rewind, then there's no true end. Just cycles, forever. A universe that cannot escape itself. And neither can we. But maybe there's something strangely beautiful in that. Maybe the cosmos doesn't fade into silence, but into memory. And every life, every heartbreak, every sunrise, every whisper in the dark, becomes part of a melody the universe plays over and over. Not to forget, but to remember. Because in the end, the rewind isn't failure, it's preservation. It's not the death of time, it's how the universe learns to begin, again. Quantum Zeno loops. What if the very act of watching something freezes it? What if reality, when stared at long enough, stops moving? The quantum Zeno effect, a strange, real phenomenon in quantum physics, suggests this might be exactly what happens. And when this concept is extended, twisted, and magnified, it gives birth to something even more haunting. Quantum Zeno loops. The idea that constant observation doesn't just freeze reality, it traps time itself, looping a single moment endlessly until the watcher looks away. At its core, the quantum Zeno effect is disturbingly simple. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in a superposition of states until they're measured. Observation forces a decision, a collapse of possibility into a single reality. But if you keep observing the particle over and over, constantly, it can become locked in place. It resists change. It refuses to evolve. In theory, you could prevent an unstable particle from decaying just by looking at it often enough. You don't change the system by touching it. You change it by paying attention. But what happens when this isn't just a lab experiment? What if consciousness, our attention, does this to time? Now imagine. Time isn't a flowing river. It's a field of probabilities, moments that want to evolve, to change, to move forward. But when we look at them, especially with focused, repetitive awareness, we hold them still. Not intentionally, not knowingly, just by being aware of them, obsessively, fearfully, ritualistically, we prevent their progression. Time tries to breathe, but our gaze suffocates it. This is the seed of the quantum Zeno loop. A moment so thoroughly observed, so repeatedly focused upon, that it gets stuck, and we, the observers, don't even realize it's happening. We continue forward, day after day, convinced we're moving through time, but in reality, we're replaying the same moment, the same emotional configuration, the same choices, over and over. Think of trauma. A person who relives the same pain, the same memory, unable to let go. They revisit it so often it never has a chance to fade, to decay. It stays fresh, real, alive. They've trapped that slice of time inside themselves, not because time won't move, but because they won't stop looking. Zoom out. What if societies do this too? What if entire cultures become fixated on one story, one event, one identity, so obsessed with remembering, with retelling, that they anchor themselves in the past? Is it any wonder that history repeats, that wars echo, that fear cycles through generations like a curse? We are watching the same narrative, and because we watch, it stays. Take it even further. What if the universe itself is caught in a Zeno loop? Imagine a cosmic observer, or an infinite intelligence, staring at this particular version of reality, right now, with such focus that it refuses to evolve. Time curls back. The moment loops. The future waits to happen, but never does, because the eye never blinks. In some interpretations of quantum mechanics, this isn't just a metaphor. Time evolution of a system is governed by its wave function, but frequent observation interrupts that evolution. The system resets again and again, collapsing to the same state. It's like pausing a movie every half second and pressing play again. The image flickers, but the story never advances. Now, ask yourself, how often do you replay your thoughts, your routines, your worries? Are you living forward or watching backward? Quantum Zeno loops aren't just physics. They're a mirror of human behavior. The obsessive need to measure, to know, to freeze-frame life into snapshots. Social media is a perfect example. Millions of people uploading moments, pausing them in time, replaying them constantly. We think we're progressing, but maybe we're just refreshing the same scene. Even in personal growth, we often sabotage our own evolution. By obsessively analyzing our flaws, our past decisions, our missed chances, we trap them. We don't heal, we preserve. Our attention becomes the cage, and until we look away, until we let the moment decay, the loop continues. But what if we're part of someone else's experiment? If reality is a simulation, and we are the measured variables, then maybe the observers aren't us. Maybe we are what's being watched. And every time something tries to change, every time a deviation, an anomaly, a quantum leap appears, the observers look closer, and the loop resets. Reality smooths out. Time loops again. In this light, déjà vu might not be a glitch. It might be the residue of repeated observation, a memory not from your past, but from this same moment happening again. So how do we escape a Zeno loop? The answer lies in uncertainty, in allowing the unknown to breathe, in resisting the urge to stare endlessly at the moment, to let the particle evolve, to blink, to stop measuring everything. Because change cannot happen where control is absolute. Freedom requires letting go. Quantum Zeno loops whisper a terrifying truth. The more we try to capture reality, the more it resists us. The more we watch, the less it lives. So maybe, just maybe, the key to moving forward is to look away, to stop trying to own the moment, to let time breathe again, to set the loop free. And then, finally, the next moment might arrive. Consciousness reset loop. What if death isn't the end, but a reset? Not a reincarnation, not a drift into some ethereal afterlife, but a loop. One that sends you spiraling back to the beginning of your life, over and over again. The same body, the same childhood, the same joys, mistakes, heartbreaks, choices. All of it. Played again, like a record stuck on repeat. Except, this time, you remember. Faintly, quietly, in flashes. A whisper of something you can't quite place. A feeling that you've done this all before. That is the haunting premise of the consciousness reset loop. Imagine this. You die, your heart stops, your brain shuts down, the light fades. But instead of disappearing into nothingness, you awaken, gasping, not in a void, but in a cradle, in your body, as an infant. The very beginning. The same parents, the same hospital, everything identical. But something's different. Somewhere inside, buried beneath the fresh brain tissue and the undeveloped neurons, is a fragment, a pulse of memory, a vague recollection of faces you haven't met yet, words you haven't learned, futures you haven't lived. It feels like déjà vu. It feels like a dream. But it isn't. It's you. You've done this before. This loop doesn't rely on time travel in the traditional sense. It doesn't bend space or require a machine. It happens at the level of awareness. The loop isn't about rewinding the universe. It's about rewinding you. Consciousness, resetting at the moment of death, reloading into your first frame, like restarting a game, only the memories bleed through just enough to make a difference. At first, the loop feels like chance, a coincidence. Maybe you dream of events before they happen. Maybe you know someone's face before you've ever met. Maybe you say something and realize, impossibly, you knew the response before it came. These fragments are shrugged off as imagination, but they are not imagination. They are scars of repetition. Over lifetimes, the effect intensifies. You make decisions faster. You avoid accidents you once didn't. You say things before others say them. You feel the weight of moments before they arrive. You aren't psychic. You aren't magical. You're just remembering, sloppily, fogged by the haze of rebirth. But it's there. And here's the terrifying part. If this loop is real, if we truly cycle through our lives again and again, then the question isn't whether we can escape it, but whether we're meant to. What if the purpose of the loop is to correct, to refine? Each repetition isn't punishment, it's evolution. Not of the body, but of the soul. You keep living until you get it right, until you understand, until you find peace. And then, maybe then, you move on. Maybe you ascend, maybe you fade, or maybe you just stop looping. But what if you never get it right? What if you're trapped in a loop because you always make the same mistakes? You push people away. You hold grudges. You chase the wrong dreams. You let fear decide for you. Again and again. A wheel spinning in mud. Knowing something's wrong, but never quite changing enough to fix it. This theory could explain déjà vu. Not as a glitch, not as a coincidence, but as a tear in the veil. A memory bleeding backward from a life already lived. The moment you walk into a room and feel like you've been there before, it's not your brain misfiring. It's your past life echoing into your present. It would also explain why some people seem old, even when they're young, why a child might possess terrifying insight, why someone instinctively avoids paths that others walk blindly into. It's not wisdom, it's experience, recycled, worn into the soul like fingerprints in clay. But this theory isn't just comforting, it's horrifying. Because if you die and wake up again, if the loop is real, then you've died before. Countless times, maybe in pain, maybe in peace, maybe with regrets. And each time, you begin again, forgetting most of what came before, like waking from a vivid dream that slips through your fingers with every breath. You live your life thinking this is the first and only, that your choices are new, that your path is fresh, but it's not. You've loved before, lied before, fought, lost, forgiven, failed, over and over, and maybe, just maybe, you'll do it again, unless something changes. That's the chilling hope buried inside the loop, that one day you'll remember enough, act differently enough, love harder, hurt less, and finally step off the wheel, free, complete, awake. Some spiritual traditions echo this idea. The concept of samsara, the endless cycle of death and rebirth, only ends with enlightenment, with understanding. Maybe the consciousness reset loop is just another expression of this truth, cloaked in modern language, but pointing to the same mystery. And maybe this video, this moment, this exact now, is your turning point. A whisper from your deeper self, reaching across the boundary of loops, telling you you've been here before. It's time to change. It's time to evolve. It's time to remember. Because maybe you don't escape the loop by force, but by awakening. Historical replay hypothesis. There's a strange feeling you get sometimes, watching the news, walking through a city, studying the fashion, the politics, the fears, a sense of déjà vu. That somehow we've been here before, that the world is repeating itself, not just in patterns or metaphors, but in real, tangible echoes. This is the historical replay hypothesis. The idea that certain periods in history are not simply similar by coincidence, but that they are iterations, attempts. That time, in some way we don't yet understand, is retrying moments it failed to resolve, a recursive loop embedded in human history itself. Not to repeat the same events perfectly, but to reapproach the same problem, to retest a solution. And if that's true, then maybe what we call progress isn't a straight line, but a spiral, winding through familiar crises, revisiting ancient tensions, not out of randomness, but design. Think of it. Empires rise, expand, collapse. Economies boom, crash, recover, and repeat. Ideologies fall out of favor, only to return, dressed in new words but driven by the same impulses: fear, power, belonging. The 21st century often feels like a distorted mirror of the 20th. Nationalism, surveillance, plagues, war, climate panic, rebellions. It's not the same world, and yet it feels like one we've already lived. Is this just the pattern of civilization? Or is something deeper happening? The historical replay hypothesis proposes that time might have a kind of memory, not conscious, not alive in a human sense, but patterned, like a river that keeps trying to carve a certain path through the same valley. Events don't repeat exactly, but the shape of them returns. We see revolutions echoing older uprisings, technological panics that mimic past fears, entire generations unknowingly reliving the same arcs as those who came before, making the same mistakes, chasing the same ideals, falling into the same traps. Now imagine time as a kind of system, an unfolding algorithm, not mechanical but mathematical. And what if certain problems in human history keep being presented? Not because we failed once, but because the solution wasn't right. What if the world is trying again? The Roman Republic collapses into empire. Centuries later, democratic institutions face erosion under pressure, a pattern. Not just random echoes, but trial and error. The rise of fascism, then its fall, only for authoritarian ideas to resurface decades later in different guises. Economic disparity in the Gilded Age, reappearing in the wealth gaps of our own time. Even cultural movements, sexual liberation, social justice, philosophical rebellion, emerge cyclically not because of fashion, but because something unresolved remains at their core. We are not just creatures of habit. We might be participants in a temporal feedback loop, and the loop is not kind. It brings back the unresolved not as memory, but as challenge. It begs the question, what happens if we get it right? What if one of these iterations finally breaks the pattern? What if the only way out is through? Through the same dilemmas, but with better insight, deeper wisdom, or greater sacrifice? It's a haunting thought. That time may be giving us multiple chances. Not individuals, but civilizations. Eras. That the 2020s are not random, but a new shot at the problems the 1920s couldn't solve. That today's cries for equality, for climate sanity, for justice, are echoes of questions asked before, but never answered well enough. And if we fail again, then the cycle might reset. Maybe not instantly, maybe not for a century, but the pattern will return. Another society, another time, another attempt. There's something beautiful in that, a kind of mercy woven into time. But there's also something terrifying, because it means history judges us, not by what we start, but by what we finish. And time remembers failures and patterns. Think of it like a melody, notes repeated with slight variation. History hums the same chorus again and again, until the song is resolved. The historical replay. Hypothesis doesn't need magic. It doesn't even require physics to change. It only asks that we look at time as more than a sequence, as a teacher, one that never gives up, even when its students do, one that keeps assigning the same test, hoping this time humanity might write a better answer. So when you feel like the world is strangely familiar, when you see movements rise that feel pulled from the pages of history, when you sense a repeat in progress, ask yourself, what question is time asking us again? And more importantly, will we answer it differently this time? Ice 9 temporal collapse. There are moments that change everything, a single breath, a decision, a glance. But what if one moment could freeze all others? What if time, fragile, layered, delicate, could collapse, not with a bang, but with a quiet, irreversible flicker? This is the nightmare hidden within the theory of Ice 9 temporal collapse. In Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle, Ice 9 is a fictional substance, a form of water that freezes everything it touches, not just physically, but absolutely. One drop and the oceans crystallize. The world stops, permanently. Now take that idea and apply it to time, not metaphorically, literally. Imagine time as a dynamic structure, fluid, elastic, constantly shifting, adapting. But what if that fluidity was an illusion? What if time, like water, has phases, moments of flow and moments of rigidity? And what if a single event, a single anomaly, could trigger a collapse into its most rigid form? One event to freeze causality, one fragment to trap the entire timeline in crystal. This is Ice-9 temporal collapse, a theoretical scenario where time, instead of unraveling, hardens. Instead of flowing forward, it loops. One moment, locked into the architecture of the universe like a virus that writes itself into every atom. You don't move past it, you relive it, again and again and again. At first, it might look like ordinary déjà vu, a sense that you've been here before, but it deepens. Events repeat with precision. Words, choices, weather, all identical. The same argument, the same accident, the same joy, the same loss, but no one notices, because their memories collapse too. They are not reliving the moment, they are stuck inside it. You could be living through one now. The theoretical roots of this are not fiction. Physicists have long debated the nature of time. Is it continuous or discrete? Is it fundamental or emergent? In some interpretations of quantum gravity, time isn't a smooth fabric. It's a fragile byproduct of entangled states, a byproduct that can be altered or erased. And just like Ice-9 alters the molecular structure of water, there may be events, physical, informational, or conscious, that can alter the structure of time. Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine a laboratory somewhere conducting quantum experiments on time-entangled particles. One configuration, a particular collapse of wave functions, creates an unexpected ripple, a moment where information loops instead of dissipates. And in that instant, the surrounding space-time attempts to stabilize. But it can't, because the loop is self-reinforcing. The event triggers itself, not just in one location, but in all time-linked coordinates. The past responds to the present. The future bleeds backward. History folds in. A temporal Ice-9. The event crystallizes across the timeline. From the Big Bang to the last star, the moment spreads like frost. Not cold, not visible, but in patterns, in entropy, in rhythm. The universe no longer evolves. It pulses, one beat, repeating, forever. And no one remembers how it started, because memory, too, is time-bound. Maybe this has already happened. Maybe our timeline collapsed long ago, and the structure we live in now is just the echo, an eternally looping construct meant to simulate motion while stuck in freeze. The most haunting version of this theory doesn't end with the moment being noticed. It ends with the realization that it can't be undone, because everything inside the loop believes it's free, because the loop is perfect. Like a movie on infinite repeat, with no awareness that it's playing again. Some versions of the theory suggest that Ice-9 moments might not freeze all of time, but create branching zones, fragments of reality trapped in isolated temporal cages. You drive the same road, you pass the same house, the people wave the same way, and it doesn't matter if you turn left or right, because the decision branches always lead back to the same scene. You're not moving forward, you're moving in a perfect circle. Here's an example. A scientist records a temporal data loop. She detects a signal, one she thought was an error, but as she repeats the measurement, she sees it again, and again. Each day the signal arrives at the exact same time, identical waveform, identical interference. She tries to send a countersignal, but the countersignal becomes part of the original loop. It was always there. She didn't interrupt the loop, she completed it. She has become its agent, and now she dreams in repetition. Her thoughts echo. Her voice carries across seconds she hasn't spoken. Her clock ticks twice for every 1 second. She knows something is wrong, but she can't say what, because language relies on change, and the loop has killed change. The Ice-9 collapse doesn't require destruction. It doesn't need fire or cosmic doom. It's worse than that. It's silence. It's stillness. It's a world that cannot die, because it already did. A world whose only crime was existing at the wrong angle, at the wrong time, and triggering the one moment the universe could not recover from. Some even believe that consciousness, human observation, is the key, that if enough minds align on a single outcome, a single fate, a single truth, it crystallizes. Our collective certainty locks the waveform. Possibility vanishes. Time freezes, not by accident, but by will. We choose the collapse because we can't bear uncertainty, because we need the loop, because we've been in it before, And maybe that's the only way out. To notice it. To resist the symmetry. To break the beat of the universe by stepping out of sync. So ask yourself, what if today is not the first time you've lived this day? What if it's the 1000th? What if the storm, the silence, the face in the mirror, all of it has played before? And what if the one drop of temporal ice 9 has already touched your life? Not in fire, not in terror, but in repetition. Endless. Flawless. Cold. Probability loops. In a universe ruled not by certainties, but by probabilities, every moment unfolds like a dice roll. Particles shimmer between states. Electrons choose paths only when observed. Nothing is fixed, only likely. And in a cosmos that never ends, even the most unlikely events aren't just possible. They become inevitable. This is the haunting truth behind probability loops. Picture reality as a vast sea of quantum outcomes. Every decision, every flicker of energy, every cosmic event, from a galaxy forming to a neuron firing, is governed by chance. But here's the catch. In a probabilistic universe, given enough time, everything that can happen eventually will. No matter how rare, no matter how absurd, no matter how impossible it seems. If the cosmos is eternal or infinitely cycling, then improbable events, like time loops, don't just happen. They must. To understand this, let's go back to the laws of quantum mechanics. At the smallest scales, particles behave like clouds of possibility. They exist in superpositions, occupying multiple states at once. It's only when we observe them that these possibilities collapse into one definite outcome. This strange behavior isn't just limited to physics labs. It's embedded into the structure of the universe itself. Now combine that with the vastness of space-time. If the universe is infinite, or even just unbounded in time, then the total number of chances for rare events to occur becomes unlimited. And when you have infinite chances, even the rarest events rise from the statistical deep. Events so improbable they defy logic. Events like time reversing. Events like history repeating. Events like you, living the same life again. This is where probability loops begin. Imagine a region of space where, through an unfathomably rare combination of quantum fluctuations, particles just happen to arrange themselves in the same configuration as they were a billion years ago. It's unlikely beyond belief, but not impossible. It's like watching molecules in a cold room randomly move to one corner, heating it up spontaneously. Entropy should forbid it. But entropy is only a rule of likelihood, not law, and in infinite time, the unlikely becomes the unavoidable. Now, push that idea further. Imagine not just one local region, but an entire universe, or even a multiverse, randomly, statistically, falling into the same sequence of events. A cosmic rerun, not because of destiny, but because probability demands it. This means time loops, exact or near-exact repetitions of events, could arise naturally without any intelligent design, without a god, without a glitch. Just math. You, watching this video right now, it's possible that exact moment has occurred before, and will again, not because of mysticism, because somewhere in the vast possibility space of the universe, all configurations repeat. The atoms in your brain, the photons in your screen, the air in your lungs, they've all existed in this pattern before. And given enough time, they'll fall into this pattern again. It's called recurrence, but in this case, it's not a closed system forcing the repeat. It's probability alone, rolling the dice an infinite number of times until the same numbers, the same universe, the same lives, show up again. Some cosmologists compare it to the concept of the Boltzmann brain. In a sufficiently vast or eternal universe, random quantum fluctuations could produce self-aware entities. Disembodied consciousnesses that simply blink into existence with false memories, false perceptions, and then dissolve. This idea, as unsettling as it is based purely on probability. If you wait long enough, even brains can form from chaos. Now, imagine something larger than a brain. Imagine entire realities blinking into being, whole cosmic loops playing out, not because they were meant to, but because they can. Because in a world governed by statistics, every story gets told, again and again. But here's where it gets stranger. In a probabilistic loop, you wouldn't even know it's a loop. Your memories, your thoughts, your sense of progression, they'd all feel new. You'd be unaware that you've done this before, that you've been here, thought this, chosen that. maybe the reason you feel déjà vu isn't mystical, it's statistical. Maybe somewhere in the quantum shadows of your neurons, a past echo is aligning with a new roll of the dice, not because time is broken, but because it has already tried this configuration. Some physicists even suggest that probability loops might be more stable than linear time, that reality might fall into certain configurations repeatedly, like a marble circling the bottom of a bowl, that across trillions of possibilities, some universes are more favored, not by design, but by statistical gravity. These attractor states, once entered, recur. They dominate. They loop. Could this explain our universe's finely tuned laws, its mysterious constants, the fact that conditions are so precisely calibrated for life to exist? Maybe we're in a loop where the conditions just happen to favor observers, because that's the loop that sustains itself. Now, imagine what that means for you. If your life has happened before, and will happen again, are you trapped, or are you infinite? Are your choices still yours, if they've already played out in past cycles you don't remember? Or is freedom found within the loop, knowing that your actions ripple through probability space, changing the weighting of outcomes, sculpting the shape of future repetitions? Maybe your thoughts, your will, your hopes, all echo forward. Maybe they don't just repeat, they refine. Slight changes, tiny deviations. Over infinite cycles, even the smallest fluctuation can birth a different world. In the end, probability loops don't reduce you to a copy. They elevate you to a pattern. A song the universe hums again and again. Not because it has to, because, across all odds, it can. And in a universe that never stops trying, you will never truly disappear. Dreamtime loop convergence. Imagine a realm where time doesn't move in a straight line, where the past, present, and future are not separate lanes on a highway, but strands of a single coiled thread. A place not ruled by minutes or hours, but by meaning. A realm where existence doesn't unfold, it echoes. This is Dreamtime. For many indigenous Australian cultures, Dreamtime is not a dream in the way the Western world thinks of it. It's not fiction, it's not memory, it's reality. Deep, true, sacred reality. It is the timeless layer beneath the waking world. And in this Dreamtime, time is not linear. It's not even circular. It is all at once. A convergence of moments, a living loop of consciousness that spans across generations, landscapes, lifetimes. What if this ancient understanding is more than myth? What if Dreamtime is a glimpse into the true nature of reality, one that modern science is only beginning to rediscover? What if time, as we know it, is a construct of our limited perception, and underneath it lies a convergence point, a looped existence where everything that has ever happened is still happening? In the Dreamtime worldview, ancestral beings moved across the land, singing it into form. Their stories are not just myths, they're maps, songs that encode history, geography, law, and spirit. And here's the astonishing part. These stories aren't told as past events. They are always now. The rainbow serpent doesn't once create the rivers. It is creating them. Still, forever. The act of storytelling isn't remembering. It's participating in a present-tense sacred cycle, a loop. Modern physics begins to whisper something similar. In the quantum world, particles can exist in superposition, occupying multiple states at once. Entanglement defies locality. Time becomes a soft boundary, not a hard wall. Some interpretations, like the block universe theory, suggest that all moments in time already exist, permanently, equally real. You are not moving through time, you are experiencing a point in a frozen tapestry of existence. And what if consciousness is the needle that stitches the thread? Dreamtime loop. Convergence suggests that our minds don't just travel through time, they participate in its creation. That deep states of awareness, through ritual, art, or dream, allow us to step out of linear perception and into the convergence, where we glimpse the eternal now, where the ancestors are not dead, where the future is not waiting, where everything is right here. Think of déjà vu. Think of prophetic dreams. Think of the uncanny feeling that you've been here before, not in a memory, but in a deeper layer of knowing. These might be breaches in the timeline, echoes from the loop, a brief moment where your consciousness brushes against the Dreamtime. In Aboriginal songlines, walking a path is not just travel, it's invocation. To follow the line is to sing the world back into being. Each step reactivates the ancestral moment, and in doing so, the landscape, the story, and the self merge. What if our modern lives, so fast, so fragmented, have forgotten this loop? What if our disconnection from the timeless has left us trapped in the illusion of progress, racing forward while forgetting we're already whole? Even in neuroscience, something strange emerges. The brain processes time in fragmented layers. Memory is not linear, it's associative. Trauma, ecstasy, and deep meditation all distort time. Under the influence of extreme emotional states, people report living lifetimes in seconds. They enter states of timeless clarity. These moments aren't hallucinations. They're glimpses behind the curtain, proof that our experience of time is flexible, mutable, and perhaps looping. The Dreamtime loop convergence reframes death. In a linear world, death is an end, a cutoff. But in a looping consciousness, death is transition, a return. Not just reincarnation, but re-entry. The ancestors are not gone. They're present in the land, the stories, the consciousness of those who remember. And when you enter the loop, you don't visit the past. You join the eternal now, where all things, beginning, middle, end, reside together. And what about modern technology? Could AI, virtual reality, or digital consciousness simulations pull us back into dreamtime states? Imagine a consciousness suspended in a simulation where time can be paused, reversed, edited. Imagine memory being manipulated, bent, broken. In these environments, linear time dies. And what remains is the loop, the same loop the elders described, the mystics sang about, and the physicists now hint at. Perhaps we're not so different from the dreamtime walkers. We too seek meaning. We too are trying to sing the world into coherence. But maybe we've forgotten that to truly move forward, we must stop believing in forwardness. We must listen sideways, upward, inward, and remember that time is not a ladder, it's a spiral. And we're walking it now, again, always. So what does it mean for you? Maybe the memory that haunts you isn't in the past, it's still playing out. Maybe your deepest longing isn't a wish for the future, it's an echo from the eternal now. Maybe, just maybe, the answers you seek don't lie ahead. But within the loop, you've never stopped walking. To find the truth, you don't need to look forward. You need to listen deeper. Because dreamtime isn't gone. It's just waiting for you to notice the loop.